I was able to see some of your stream where you responded to me. I didn't get to watch all of it, mostly because I was in the middle of finals. But yesterday, I took my last final, so I finally have more free time to just like have conversations. So if you want to have a conversation, I'm perfectly. You can say what you think I'm hypocritical on. We can have it back and forth. And you know, I'm fine. Let me have it.
Okay, so first off, like the reason I was so pissed off, I wasn't mad at first because I think both of us would watch stuff that we stream or tweet and say, yeah, I heavily disagree with that, which is fine. And as you know from your streams, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that makes people shitty people. What pissed me off was Mr. Geck, who works on your channel, or at least helps shut up the Hippy Dippy podcast.
He is my editor, and basically he helps me edit stuff. Yeah.
Right, blaming me for getting COVID. That's what pissed me off. And I know you saw it. Now, I'm not blaming you for him saying that, but that was the impetus for me doing a video. It was more focused on Mr. Geck than you. Though I do think you're a hypocrite about it, and I stand by everything I said. But the reason I was so pissed off in the video is he know damn well me and my wife got COVID, and he admits that he said, oh, only people that don't take it seriously are the ones that get COVID, not people like Dylan that practice responsible social distance. And so he could kiss my ass, and that's why I did the video and why I was so pissed. And you saw that he said it and chose not to comment on it, which is fine.
I will say that I 100%, and you can believe me or not believe me, that I tweeted out, I responded to you, then you responded to me, and then Geek responded to you, then someone else responded to you. And at that point, I was like, oh shit, this is becoming a dog pile. And I checked out because I didn't want to contribute to a dog pile. I don't think dog piles are productive, and I honestly did not see it until you brought it up later, and then I had to go back and find it.
Yeah, well, that's fine that you didn't want to respond on this stream. That's fine. And I continued to respond to other people on the Twitter stream, but I was directing to them and not you. But that's what pissed me off. And if it would be the equivalent, and that's the reason that I probably won't be doing your show if he's part of it, because it would be like this. I have a radio show, as you know. If my radio show host made comments that someone on your family got ill and blamed them for that, I would not expect you to come on my show unless I publicly denounce that. So that's just the way it is.
So if you want to know 100%, Rob, I reviewed the tweets. I saw you had a debate with him. I haven't reviewed the debate just because there's like
it's just me swearing at him.
I assumed that you guys didn't have a productive conversation. Right. I reviewed the tweets and I looked at that and I saw like I basically made the determination that if you were to come on my show in the future, I would choose somebody else to be my co-moderator because I don't think he could do the job effectively because I don't think you guys could have a relationship which is cordial. And I also know Geek has a terrible temper. And I don't think he would be able to be a moderator in that situation. So I do plan to still employ him, and I don't think you want to get him fired or anything, right?
No. But but it's different. It's different. I'm not just asking him. Like, it's different. Because the difference of it is this. I wouldn't go on a show if there was a producer on the show that was a piece of garbage that blamed my family for some illness or some tragedy just because they didn't do the show that day. Yeah. Like that's totally different. I wouldn't expect you to do the same or anyone else. And so
I don't expect that.
Yeah, that's all. And he knows, and I told him that he cost you a panelist, which is fine. He's probably more valuable and put in more work to your show by far than I did, so that's fine. I don't expect anything different. And I don't wish him ill. I'm not going to return the favor and blame him for getting COVID or somehow wish it on him or want him to lose his show or his participation on your show. I'm just not going to be around to benefit a show that's benefiting him when he blamed my family for getting COVID. It's that simple.
So you just don't want to associate with the show generally, even if he's not co-moderator when you're on it.
Right. If he's no longer part of the show in general, that's one thing. But I don't want to be part of a show or benefiting someone that literally blamed me and hundreds of thousands of other people that got COVID for getting COVID. Especially when I've wore a mask, I have social distanced, and unlike you, I didn't go to a large gathering. So the actual criticism that he made towards me that somehow I was to blame for me getting COVID, where I literally followed all of the social distancing orders, is even doubly aggravating. But that's why I was pissed. That's what the pissed off nature was. Now, as far as the general hypocrisy, yeah, I do think you're a hypocrite. I don't wish ill on you for it, but yes, If you say that people should be punished for not following or for not following scientific guidelines, and then you choose to break some of those scientific guidelines, your argument that, well, I think the guidelines I'm following are more important is bullshit. It just is. It's hypocritical. It's that simple.
So, okay. Well, let me just make it very simple for you then. I believe that wearing a mask is important, and I do believe in mask mandates, right? I believe that's a decent thing.
What about being 6 feet apart?
I do also believe in that. And you know what? There's footage of me at the event, and you can see me while a fight's going on, staying 6 feet apart from people, even while getting maced. But, so, I mean, if I get maced and still manage to stay 6 feet apart from people, I mean, that's commitment to that. Now, besides that, the reason why is I can believe in one law and disagree with another law. I believe, due to the data that I've looked at, when it comes to the fact of when I looked at the data and when the studies have come out, that when there have been major BLM protests, there have not been spikes in COVID cases, and the model stayed the same. You can wear masks. It is outside, which the data has shown that when you do protests and they have events outside, this is why restaurants have a lot more outside seating now. It is safer, and I'm staying 6 feet apart. If these protests are done effectively, a great example is this is a coordinated protest against Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, then I would say that is something that I believe in. And I am willing to go to a protest, even if it is against the law in certain instances, if I believe, and that's fine, if I believe in the cause and I disagree with the law. The difference is I believe that restriction on this crisis was completely 100% valid and legitimate, because I believe a gymnasium, and as somebody, you know, I boxed Golden Gloves, right? I was in gyms. People breathe heavy. People are sweaty. People breathe. I mean, like, I can't tell you how many times I've boxed and left the ring wanting to throw up, and I'm just heaving everywhere, right? Working out, you're going to breathe a lot, and you're not wearing a mask, and you're in a closed environment. That seems like an environment that makes a lot of sense to mandate that people who come in there wear masks. And as somebody who wore masks through winter while I was jogging, trying to prepare for Golden Gloves fights, 100% I think that was legitimate. I disagree with one law to combat coronavirus, and this has happened before. I was extremely here's the thing that I got a lot of heat for. I don't know, and I still don't know how I feel about coronavirus restrictions on churches. I actually don't know how I feel about that, because I'm a man of deep faith. And while a lot of people say it's not an essential service, I do think church and faith is essential to my life. So I don't know how I feel about that. And I can have a weird feeling. I don't know for sure yet. I still don't know. I lean towards understanding it, but I really don't know for sure. But here's the show. So I have disagreed with some restrictions, and I agree with others. And this was one when it comes to the protest that I disagreed with. I believe the Million MAGA March people, they didn't wear, while the vast majority of them that I saw didn't wear masks. If they would have done it in a more responsible manner, I would have been like, sure, even if you disagree with me, go protest.
The problem is that you're looking at it as a law and whether or not it's acceptable to break a law, but that's not the issue at hand. The issue at hand is it okay for your personal belief, because of what you feel, to violate social distance orders and put people's lives in jeopardy? So let me ask you this. Do you believe Dr. Fauci when he says, despite if the evidence has shown that mass spikes have occurred through Black Lives Matter rallies, that people should avoid these rallies because there's a chance that it'll spread COVID? Do you believe that there is a chance that it'll spread COVID?
Is there a chance? There
Yes.
might be. Yeah.
Okay, so then you made the choice for something that you wanted to personally do that wasn't life or death to risk spreading COVID.
Well, no. The thing is, if
Yeah.
all the data listen to me. If all the data that I see currently rejects that conclusion, and I can wear a mask, and I can be 6 feet apart, and it's outside, then I think that's enough for me to say, I think this is something I can do responsibly. And I believe protests, and I do also believe the same for small businesses, are a vital part for a healthy democracy, definitely during an election season, and definitely when there is large-scale disagreement about the future of policing in this country, when a certain group of people feel that this is injustice that needs to be battled, right? Some people would even say that when it comes to policing, that's its own health issue. A lot of people would put that forward.
Right,
So,
but
when
as confident as you are believing that that's an important thing, there are people that equally feel it's important to be able to have a livelihood and operate
Yes.
their businesses.
Yes,
and
and
there
I
are
agree with
people
you.
that
I
equally
agree with
believe there are studies that are out there. Again, you know this from talking to me over and over. I've wore a mask almost everywhere. I've also social distanced. I haven't attended any rallies. But there are people that point to hypocrisy and the changing story from the people that are advocating masks. And there are studies that talk about the pros and cons of mask wearing. There are also, in fact, early in this, I remember doing a video way back in March from one medical doctor that said she was worried that one of the problems with masks, of course she was advocating wearing masks, but one of the problems were people would have a false sense of security because they would say, it's okay for me to gather in large social crowds as long as I'm wearing a mask. And that's not the intended purpose of the mask. And so as confident as you are, well, I've looked at the science and I know, you know that you don't have the full picture, nor does anyone. And so the question should become this: before people could say, I am moral, but other people are to be judged for violating science, it's a hypocritical position.
So the difference is, in this case, is I don't want that man's business to be shut down. I don't want him to stop operating the business. All I want the man to do is say, hey, we're in an environment where it's a gymnasium. We're in a closed building. And everybody here is heaving and hollering because it's a gym. You get tired in the gym and you breathe heavy. If there's any environment I could possibly think of that could be a COVID hotspot, it is legitimately a gym because of that fact.
So is it...
I don't want the business to be shut down. I simply want him to say, hey, if you enter here, here's a free mask. That's all I want him to do. He doesn't even need to give him a free mask. He can just say, bring your own.
But then why aren't you criticizing the governors and the people that make these orders? Because if you go back and you look at what this gym was saying originally, they originally were operating, this was back in June or even before that, perhaps May, when they were first shut down. They wanted to operate at a limited capacity at 20%. They were taking steps to wipe down machines. Originally, they were trying to have people stand at least 6 feet apart as they had a limited capacity while it was going on. Yet they were still shut down. If it's just masks are so important, shouldn't you be out there saying, wow, I believe that masks are enough to solve this situation on their own. Therefore, all of these leaders that are advocating for lockdowns are intentionally crushing small businesses for no reason.
Well, no. Well, the thing is, right, I guess you haven't asked me about my opinion on these people. You just assume me. Here's another thing. This is another example, Rob. You assume a lot of my positions, and you assume them constantly. One great example of this is later in this very same video, you're like, Dylan, he's so angry, and you mock my voice on like how I'm outraged about a church that I have an emotional connection to being angry that its property was vandalized.
Right.
And then you say, but why didn't you call out the left and BLM Antifa violence? Rob, you must have never seen any of my commentary on this. Every single time I talked about it, I opened by saying, don't burn people's property.
I thought I heard you say over and over that tearing down statues was okay.
When did I say that?
I thought that while I was on your panel that we had discussed that before. That you said that you didn't see a problem with them tearing down statues.
No, I said, okay.
I'll fully apologize right now if you're telling me that you have a problem with Black Lives. Okay.
If anyone going out and destroying anybody's property can completely destroy people's livelihoods. As somebody who I remember there was $30 between me and being homeless, that is something that if the car would have been burnt down, my family would have lost its job, I would have lost my house, and I understand that. Right? I understand the damage that can be done. Now, after I usually have the clarification, I say, now let's talk about what caused this social breakdown to the point where people think this is their only release is to do this. And that's where the conversation goes from there. And that's where we're going to have a disagreement. But I have never was like, this is fine or even like tried to pretend it wasn't happening. Now,
so you're just real quick on the question of statues. You are completely against them tearing down statues.
I'm against the people going out and tearing them down forcefully. I believe in the local community deciding if the statue should stay or not.
Okay, that's different. Then I will apologize for misrepresenting your position. But so then what I would say, though, is that it was predictable. This is one of the reasons that I was so vocal against the left destroying property, because it's predictable. It's the same with the violence that we saw from Black Lives Matter and Antifa. I'm not naive. I understand there are people on the other side of the equation that can't wait to engage in violence themselves. And I said the problem that's going to result from this is if we say not you specifically, but as a public, if we say, and if people that are in positions of power say, well, it's just property. Well, the police aren't going to arrest people for removing statues or for looting or for vandalizing stuff because it's a worthwhile cause. Inevitably, people on the other side will say, we feel we have a worthwhile cause. So as offended as people are by a statue of a Civil War general, there are equally people offended by Black Lives Matter because they think they're a violent organization. So if you... Right.
Well, obviously, I would disagree. For example, I believe a statue of Robert E. Lee does offend me more than a Black Lives Matter sign, but I don't think people should go around tearing stuff down. I think it should be done through a democratic process because locals should determine the environment they live around. I believe that if a city has a statue, people in the city should be able to come out and say, we don't like this, we don't like that statue, we should take it down. There have been many examples where cities have actually come out and said, we don't want the statue here anymore, and the state government will actually come in and intervene and say no, because the state government was controlled by the other party and say, no, you're not allowed to tear that down. And these are actually the instances that have been talked about a lot ad nauseum, where there are the instances of Black communities which have Confederate statues in them that were placed in those communities when they weren't majority Black communities, and then they'll be like, they'll have a city council vote, they'll vote to take it down, then the state government comes in and say, actually, you're not doing that, we're not having you erasing history. And that stuff outrages me. But that same thing where you're like, Dylan, I don't see you coming out and making an uproar about that. I could just turn around and say, why aren't you calling that out, Rob? And I bet you would agree with me, Rob, that that's an overreach of the state government. And I think a lot of these disagreements we're having, Rob, is these assumptions of my position, because what you'll usually use is I'll say something, or somebody will say something, and you'll go into this like kind of cavalcade of like, the left TM said this, the left TM says that, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not the left, I'm me. I have my own positions. I'm somebody who's looking and buying a firearm. I'm somebody who's I'm a man of extreme faith. I'm somebody who has my own positions. And I feel very like I feel like a lot of times, Rob, I'm not having a conversation between you and me. You're having a conversation with you and this image of whatever the left is.
But
and I gotta say, Rob, hold on, Rob. I gotta tell you, right, dude. When I saw the Twitter post from you earlier, dude, like I get there's usually a lot of heat on Twitter, but your interaction with Dylan specifically, I felt like you were in that moment doing exactly what Dylan was talking about. And if you go back and review, you'll see where I liked his post because I felt like he was trying to get the conversation off of Twitter and into a medium that would actually be worthy of this level of conversation rather than just Twitter. But your responses to that were they were a lot more aggressive than I felt like that they needed to be.
Well, understand, critically thinking veteran, that if your wife gets COVID and someone defending Dylan who operates their show with them in some capacity says basically that they deserved it, you might be a little fucking pissed off too. No, right? So maybe instead of just taking the time to lecture me about how maybe my tone was a little too harsh, you could have took the time to lecture the person blaming people for getting COVID. But you didn't. Well, Rob, so I think that perhaps you have your priorities misguided. But I get it that you probably want a virtue signal because you're Dylan's friend. I get it.
Attacking me.
Right. I am.
But I didn't attack you. What I literally tried to do. Rob, what you literally did, man, is you listened to what I told you, and it was very heartfelt. This room has been very much a heartfelt conversation type room, not an arguing fucking rhetoric type room. As soon as you walked in, it became about arguing fucking rhetoric, right? Now, what I'm trying to say to you, brother, right, is that the tone that you were coming across to Dylan in that instance, if you go back and read what he said, and what he said was trying to move the conversation off of Twitter onto Discord, right? To a medium that it would be worthy, i.e. meaning that this is a great conversation that you're having, right? A place for it versus Twitter, which there is no way to eloquently be able to make any type of point, which you do very well, right? So I'm not being combative at all. As a matter of fact, I'm being very complimentary of you and the way that you speak. So what I do not want is for my kindness to be viewed as weakness.
I don't care what you want, I guess. in that sense. I care that someone basically mocked people that got COVID, and I was pissed off about it.
Right.
In the second part of the conversation, you had your chance, you said your piece. In the second part of the conversation where I was having with Dylan, I again addressed that I thought he was being hypocritical, and I was not being antagonistic towards him.
Fucking face, because you're being a disrespectful shit right now.
You see?
Let's all slow down. We're slowing down. We're slowing down. Okay, we're all gonna slow down for a second now, because again, I want to make this a productive discussion. I don't want to make this yelling match. Rob, I will say that immediately when people said like, why was Rob so aggressive? All this like stuff in my chat, because I did talk about this today, because I was like, he thinks I'm a hypocrite. Here's why I don't think I'm a hypocrite. And people are like, why aren't you laying into him? I said like, while I did make a few jokes during the thing, I ultimately said at the end of the day, yeah, jokes are fine. It's different. Yeah. But I said at the end of the day, he was getting dogpiled in my replies. He was having a very heated interaction with Geek, and right now he and his family has COVID. If he got angry at this interaction, I 100% understand. He's a human being. Do I exactly like the tone he used towards me? No, but I understand why he used it. He's going through a lot right now. That's generally how I looked at the situation.
Right. Yeah, so let me say this.
I'm being real. Like
I understand that you're being real.
Try to show care, like kindness to you, and you're being very fucking combative. Like I don't get it.
You're being
can I say something real quick?
Let's Rob. I said that to Rob. I want to hear. Wait. Okay. I said that to Rob. I want to hear what Rob said. In the aftershock, you can. I'm becoming a panel. you can talk to me. This is the non-geek hippy dippy. You can, Rob. I want to hear what you have to say.
Right. Okay. So here's the thing. Critically thinking veteran. That was the second response that I had to Dylan. Dylan called someone a dumbass, who I thought was someone who was just fighting to keep their business open. Now I've seen Dylan engage with people even on his panel harshly when it came to issues that he was passionate about. One of the issues I'm passionate about. Right. So I wasn't as aggressive towards Dylan as I was to the people, like he said, that were dogpiling on, saying that me and other people that got COVID deserved it, saying that I was a fat fuck and things like that. So I understand that you saw a small slice of that and says, geez, it looks like Rob's pissed off. But I think before you judge that small slice, you should look at everything that was going on.
I didn't pass any judgment at all. If you'd been really kind of paying attention, I was only just trying to steel man. The last part of what Dylan said is that like he was really trying to take it more to a caring, place of getting away from the bullshit, right? And that was my whole point in all of it. Is that when I saw that, I was like, yeah, like I don't know all of the stuff that was going on before that, but I really felt like, because our interactions have always been rather pleasant, I felt like, and I didn't feel like that it was obvious that you were, that's why I went through and liked some of your stuff too, if you actually go through and check your notifications.
Dylan was doing a fine job of articulating his stance, I think. Now, I still think that he's hypocritical about it, because I think...
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that.
That's the point. Now, as far as if I misinterpreted Dylan and what I thought was his defense of people tearing down statues, then I will apologize for that. It's clear that he's not saying that he did that. That's fine. I will apologize for that, and I truly mean that. So I'm glad to hear, and I do understand the idea of, well, there are always things that we have blind spots for that we could call out more, and the issue you're talking about would be one that could be true of me as well. But there's clearly a difference when we talk about what's institutionally accepted and the magnitude of things like property destruction that we see occurring. And so when I see the narrative being controlled in the mainstream by people, predictably on the left, that are actually advocating for shutting down businesses while they give the go-ahead for people to protest and violate social distance orders, to protest for things like Black Lives Matter, that's something that aggravates me. Just like it would be something that aggravates Dylan if people say occurred, which I've seen him many times get upset with that type of thing. It's an issue that I'm passionate about because I've seen people of all skin colors that are literally losing their homes and losing their businesses as we speak. And so to see them mocked for trying to fight back against the orders that are being applied by governors like in my state, Tom Wolf, who said that people were cowards who would have their license to operate taken away if they violated his social distancing order, and then 2 weeks later chose himself to violate those same orders by marching with Black Lives Matter and people holding signs that say Blue Lives Matter. It pisses me off. it's an issue that I'm passionate about and find to be hypocritical. But I will say I do apologize with the idea of implying that Dylan was, like many on the left, that was advocating for the removal of statues and stuff like that. So,
I will say, Rob, if somebody is a governor, right, and I'm saying this is the governor, who institutes a thing like no large public gatherings and public, or like, no, like, because I could see, like, for instance, if someone's like, outside, you cannot have a large public gathering. For protest, anything, passes a law like that, and then joins one, they are a hypocrite, 100%, right? I agree with you on that. It's just my position, as I never thought that was a decent legislation to put in. Now you can say, well, Dylan, what about Fauci? What about this? At the end of the day, even though I respect Fauci in most instances, Fauci isn't my god, right? Fauci isn't this person I'm like, oh, Fauci, thank you so much for giving me the knowledge and everything. I praise Fauci every morning, get on my Fauci sign. Like, if I disagree with Fauci, I disagree with Fauci. I've disagreed with Bernie Sanders before. I've disagreed with a lot of politicians I respect or have some kind of like thumbs up for. And in that instance, if that's the case, that's something I would disagree with, because I believe that even though I will agree you that small businesses are integral, the difference in this one instance is why I called him a dumbass instead of like some random other business owner a dumbass, is because the instance he was talking about here is his refusal to require guests to wear a mask in a gym. And with my personal history with gyms and knowing what the type of environment gyms are, plus him talking about 84,000 people going through his gym, because he actually said in the video 84,000 people going through his gym, and talking about all the stuff he's going through for not having his guests wear masks. That's what I thought was dumb, right? Well, now I usually don't use words like dumbass. I don't cuss on Twitter because I don't find it to be good. It was one of the few instances where I did. Maybe I should have said this is foolish and used a lighter language.
Well, that wasn't my issue with it, but
yeah. But my main thing is I still think what he did was foolish.
Right, I understand. And my point, look, understand. If this whole incident with Mr. Geck or Mr. Geek, I'm not trying to intentionally mispronounce his name, if that wouldn't have came up, it would have been another thing like probably 100 interactions we had where one of us will make a quippy comment to someone on Twitter, and it's no big deal. Like, it could be us picking on ourselves, picking on each other. It was just, I used the term dumbass back to you. I didn't mean it as if I was mad at you. I meant using the exact same word you used as him.
I was hypocritical, so you're the
right.
guy.
That's why I used the term. It wouldn't have even been an issue. I would have been on your channel the next time, and we would have brought it up.
The only thing that actually like kind of got me a little bit is when you were reading my tweet where I was upset about the church that I've prayed at that church before. You kind of mocked the way I was upset about it. And that's the only thing that actually rubbed me the wrong way.
The reason for that was I thought that you had a silence when property destruction occurred to other people. But if that's not the case, then I apologize for it.
I believe property destruction, period, is not good. And in fact, when I was in that counter protest, I reported everything I said. I didn't just say the Proud Boy charged us and this girl was stabbed. I also said I saw an instance where one of the people with us threw a firework into a crowd to a diner area where some people with red hats were. I didn't leave that part out. I said everything I saw, right? So it isn't like me just like leaving some things on the sidelines and bringing up other things. Now, certain things I'll highlight, like I highlighted that church incident because that church has a special place in my heart. So of course I'm going to highlight that a little bit more than like a Walmart in the middle of Kentucky.
Was this church the one that was lit on fire previously?
This church was the one that they took signs out of and like damaged the signs.
I know that's what happened the other night. But remember the incident where people were saying that Trump's team fired tear gas at people and he took a photo up at the church?
That's a separate church. That's a church that's in a different area. That's the one that was boarded up. This church is a different one. This is the architecture is different. I know it's a different church.
So let me just say that, like, I get it, and it is something I need to work on. I will say this: arguing with people at the individual level versus on the group level, that is something that I need to work on. I'll agree with that. But it does seem to be there are a lot of people that are raising a fuss about this church particularly that had nothing to say when Black Lives Matter protest had a fire that occurred at a different church also in the D.C. area earlier. And that's the part that's so frustrating. And understand this, it's not your fault. I'm not saying this is your fault, but you do understand the reality that the narrative is controlled by people, whether it be at the media level, at the tech level, at the corporate level, that seem to be downplaying instances of violence, vandalism, property destruction when one side does it, and blowing it up and magnifying it as much as possible when the other side does it. So, for example, there's talk that tearing, and let's not act like they burnt down the church that you're talking about. Now, any vandalism of it, it's still something that I'm against. Even if they removed signs and things that I'm opposed to, I'm still against that. That church put that property up. It's their property. You should not be allowed to vandalize it. But there's talk that there's a potential hate crime investigation into that. And so as people that I've personally known that have lost businesses, lost homes, been attacked at rallies and things like that, that we were told by the mainstream media and by many people in the Democratic Party for months, it's just property. It's no big deal. To then see those same groups so vehemently say, look at this one church. Look at what happened here. It's clear what's happened. It's clear the gaslighting that's going on. Now, is that fair to apply that to you? No. And I will apologize for that if you're making clear that you're against all property destruction.
I accept that. I accept that apology.
And so
now, Aftershock. I was going to let me respond quick, and then you can get in there. I will say I would respond that 94% of Black Lives Matter protests have been peaceful. This is something that when you go from protest to protest, 94% start peaceful, end peaceful. 6% have gotten violent. But when I look at the news, and of course, this could just be confirmation bias. It just me being my own bias showing, just like you have your own biases. When I look at the news, I don't see the lovely Black Lives Matter protests that my friend Billy was part of that was peaceful, that marched around, said Black Lives Matter, and then they all went home. That's not what's highlighted, because that's not what's going to get people to pay attention. People don't pay attention to just, hey. People pay attention to somebody throwing a brick through a window. This is true everywhere. It's true about Hong Kong. It's true about Chile. It's true about anywhere where there's massive protest movements. Whenever it gets the most violent or the most destructive or the most disturbances happen, it's when the attention gets to it. The protests in Belarus get more attention when the Belarusian police come in and grab people from the street or beat people up or end up killing protesters. It's when it gets violent that it gets the most attention. And me personally, the majority of protest coverage I saw when it was at the height of it was of the riots, even though that's only 6% of overall protests. Now, I know, Rob, you probably would like to respond to that, but Aftershock has been waiting.
Yeah, that's fine. Leave Aftershock.
This turns
no, it's okay. Okay, so there was a lot of things that were said. So and I'm trying to keep track of what was said, but so I'll try to summarize it and respond to as much as I can. So. I understand what CTV said. I wish he was here because, I want him to know that I understand what he's trying to say. I feel like maybe, I wasn't really a part of it. I was kind of just like, saying like, well said, Rob, you know what I mean? Ooh. But yeah, I was like, yeah, woo. Yeah, I definitely agree. Okay. Yeah. So I definitely agree. I feel like this could have been done a better way, but I feel like, you guys are just barely starting to understand the frustration that comes with what Rob and I are dealing with. I mean, at least for me, because from where I'm standing, it always seems like the left is only willing to call out all the evils that happen when they want to, and what side to do it. As in, like, let me ask you a question, Dylan. Was you going to these protests? Was that responsible for you to do?
I do believe it was responsible for me to do.
It was responsible.
I think it was the right thing for me to do. Yeah.
So why is it okay for you to simply go out and protest, and especially, and this, it actually reminded me of what you said earlier, which is a little disingenuous, because you said there might be a chance that that COVID was spread when. That's pretty disingenuous for you to say. That there's huge chances, especially since a big portion of the cases of having COVID, a lot of people are asymptomatic. So we don't know the true effects of what these protests were going to do, because just like you said, at the gym there were these people at the gym. You're pumping iron, you're breathing a lot. You know what I mean? Whether you're wearing a mask, that happens at a protest too. People are yelling, people are chanting, people are singing, people are running around, people are sweating. It's almost the same thing except for the masks. So the only difference between you protesting for a cause that I believe is completely is a lie, versus somebody who just simply wants to make a living and keep his business running. Mm-hmm. And okay. I feel as though you at least this is where I'm coming from. You seem to pick and choose what you want to kind of pander to the audience that you have. Okay. And that's where my problem is.
There's definitely similarities there, right? There's for the gym example and for the protest, because
you're a little bit low. How do I turn you up?
If you right click on him, you can turn his
okay. Up. Okay, so start again, sir.
There's similarities because there's humans involved and there's potential COVID, but once indoors, I mean, Dylan already laid out all the examples of why there's a less inherent risk, and you're making it sound like they're equal. Like you have an equal opportunity to spread the virus in both scenarios, and that's just very disingenuous.
But the issue is both instances are people saying, I have evaluated and think for my personal beliefs and for my personal agenda, it's worthwhile me violating orders that I know risk people getting COVID. That's the difference.
And you did not even say that it was irresponsible for you to do. That's kind of feeding into it.
I've just had
for sure.
talk.
It wouldn't be a panel without CTV's dogs showing up, right?
It's slowly turning into a panel. So when it comes to that, is that he can have whatever beliefs he wants. This is a free country. You have free beliefs. This isn't.
Who's he?
The business owner.
Okay. Yeah.
He can believe what he wants. And there's a long and storied history in this country of people disobeying the law for standing up what they believe in. A long storied history. And so at the end of the day, I also respect people who are, to an extent, going to even break the law in order to stand up for what they believe in because they're putting their stuff on the line. But if I think they're doing it for a reason which I find ridiculous, I'm going to call it out. For example, if somebody was to break the law and said, I'm not going to pay taxes, and I'm like, oh boy, what's he about to stand up for? I'm not going to pay taxes because I don't like that the government paves roads, and that's stupid. And I could be like, you know what? Okay. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's stupid. Do I respect to an extent that he's willing to put himself on the line that way to stand up for what he believes in? Yes, but I'm still going to call it out for being stupid. Now, let's say there was a different person who said, I'm not going to pay taxes. Why? To bring attention to the fact that we continue to fund a destructive war in Yemen. That's actually something that maybe I could see somebody breaking the same law but doing it for reasons that I might find more respectable, right? So it depends. It depends on what somebody's taking a stand for. Where in his instance, I think taking a stand so people don't wear a mask in his store, I find that to be.
That's not what he was opening his business for. That's not true.
Opening his business. Well, I don't think
he's opening his business because he wants to make money. He wants to earn a living, and he wants to take care of his family.
I want him to open his business. It's the masks. He just needs to tell in my opinion, he should just tell people who come to his gym, okay, you can work out. Just put this on. That's it.
Dylan, let me ask you this: do you think
like there's the mask police at every business? I mean, people are gonna wear them whether they not want or not.
Why is that even controversial, though?
Wait.
I have like a common sense question.
Okay,
like I have a common
people in here, so I'm gonna just say that the people I mostly want to talk are basically the people who involved, which is gonna be me, Rob, Aftershock, and CTV, because CTV did also reply. So
okay, so here's the.
I just wanted to ask one common sense question to maybe bridge the gap for everybody, right? Because you mentioned Aftershock mentioned yelling and stuff at a rally, and we're sitting here talking about people working in a gym, right? This is where I think that there should be some kind of common sense, because when I look, and I'm assuming that the CDC's numbers are accurate, right? Or at least that the CDC's are numbers that we can look to. So in age category 25 to 34, 1,909 people have died out of 45.9 million, right? Mm-hmm. So the categories, and this is where, like, for me, the categories of people that are working are from 25 to 64. And then when we look at who's been affected in there, the numbers are relatively small versus the number of people inside that population. Well, then you're going to argue, well, we're trying to protect the older people. Well, the way that those older people can be protected would be for them to be isolated from society. But the economy needs to continue moving forward. Otherwise, nobody's going to have any money to be able to buy groceries, right? Because the reality is that the majority of Americans are not propped up by large corporations. They're propped up by small business, right? So you have to be able to have some type of common sense whenever it comes to you employing the government to point a gun at somebody and tell them to put a mask on their face, right? So if the thing with this business is, if those people, which are probably going to be in the categories of probably 25 to 44, which there has only been recorded about
low amount of deaths. Low amount.
Yeah.
Not statistically comparative to the population.
8,500 people, right, out of however many, over 120 million, just rough math, right? If they go to the gym, right, and they're working out and they take showers afterwards before they go home, right, and everything is contained in there, whether or not they're asymptomatic then depends on that individual interacting with any of their older family members. And if they are isolating from their older family members, that's the only thing that's going to be able to help. The mask mandate at the gym isn't going to help a damn thing.
They also clean the equipment as well.
Okay, 1 second, Rob. You've been to say something.
And like that's all good points. But like, first, let me say in your defense, what you said, just him being a dumbass, is different. Again, what other people, particularly Mr. Geck, was saying, which he said, "Fuck his freedom. He should be in jail," right? Which again is kind of proving, and this is more indicative of what you're seeing in the mainstream, that it's okay for certain people to violate the orders, but other people should be in prison for violating the orders. So what you said isn't as bad as what he said. I'll give you that. But let me ask you this. You admit that there are studies that suggest that masks aren't helpful, correct?
They probably exist somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, there was one that was just released out of one of the European countries. I don't know. One of the things I try to make quite clear on my show is this. I don't give people medical advice. I choose what orders to follow myself, but I can't tell you to take a vaccine or not to take it. I can't tell you to wear a mask or not to make it. I can't tell you to go to the rally or not to go. I could point out why people distrust it. So let me ask you this, in your opinion that he's a dumbass. What if he's reading evidence that he thinks credible that suggests that masks don't work? That taken in conjunction with, we're not looking at, they said, hey, sir, you could operate your business if you have people wear masks. That's not what they told him. They said, you have to follow these social distance orders and close down, or we're going to arrest you and fine you, which they did. At the same time, his governor, Murphy, said that people weren't allowed to attend large gatherings, but then celebrated Black Lives Matter gatherings. So the problem is this, and this is what I'm trying to say here is, I think that your anger at this guy being stupid is misplaced. And here's why. There were never going to be enough police to enforce that everyone wear masks or that everyone social distance. If those things, which I don't know, are necessary to help us fight the disease, but if it's true, and I'm operating on the fact that that's true, the only way that it could be effective is if people buy into it. If we have leaders that are saying you have to follow these orders and then are unwilling to do it themselves. And it seems like every time they're like, oh, and when people are of a certain political persuasion, we allow them to violate the orders with impunity. Hell, we'll even march with them because they agree with us politically. Can you understand then why a gym owner who's losing his livelihood would say, you know what, fuck all of the orders. Fuck the lockdown order, fuck the mask order. Because the people that are forcing this upon me are doing so arbitrarily. They're allowing people that politically agree with them to violate the orders. So I don't believe any of it. So my contention to you is calling him a dumbass is misplaced. The real dumbass are the elected leaders and the health officials that said that it was okay for people to violate social distance as long as it was to fight racism.
So, especially when the Democratic leaders themselves are breaking that. It was just a little sentence, yeah. But a lot of Democratic leaders also break their own rules. So it's kind of, yeah, and that's all. Okay, I know you wanted to talk that. I just wanted to add that.
I mean, I'm not Nancy Pelosi. I'm not Governor Murphy. I can't defend what they've said on this or that. They might have said things that were bad or not. I was specifically talking about the mask thing, and that was what I was talking about in that instance. I don't live under Governor Murphy's evil regime. Maybe we should go in and liberate it since Tank's in. I don't know. I don't really know the situation with Governor Murphy. What I do know about is a thing that's been basically done in all states, which is about masks. And while you're right, there might be state data that says the other thing. There are reports you can find or pay for that say literally anything. And I do mean anything. There are reports out there that say climate change is real. There's reports out there that say the Holocaust actually didn't happen. There are reports out there that say a lot of crazy stuff. So what usually people go off of is the medical consensus, right? The idea of what's the general consensus on whatever issue. The vast majority of data suggests climate change is real. The vast majority of evidence suggests obviously the Holocaust happened. The vast majority of evidence suggests that masks are one barrier, not enough on their own, but one barrier to help stop the spread of COVID. And so I'm trying to go off the general consensus when it comes to that specific business and him enforcing that. Now, when we talk about police, he wouldn't need cops there to enforce the mask mandate if his business just said wear a mask. He could do it himself. He could say wear this mask, or you can do your business elsewhere.
He would still be arrested.
He would still be arrested,
right?
For
violating, because he's not. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, then he could still run his business anymore. Like, the thing is, the problem with me is the masks. I don't. If they're going to shut down his business or some other thing, then I disagree with that. My main disagreement there was him saying I will never enforce a mask mandate. Which, even if everything else was 100% legal and he then just rejected the mask mandate, I would still call him that. Because that's my main issue, is that is something that's very basic that we can all do that he rejects. So he rejects any participation with a wider effort, the most basic form of it, to try to help stop the spread of this disease and help not overburden our healthcare system.
But can you understand why he would be skeptical of a mask mandate if he was being told by the same scientist that in addition to a mask mandate that you have to socially distance? But those same leaders are saying it's okay for people that disagree with you politically to violate that order.
I mean, I guess I would understand that. Yeah, I could understand the frustration, but I still disagree with him.
Well, that's fine.
But let me. You.
And there are people
your frustration with your interaction,
right? And there are people that could look at you and say, "Well, you're a dumbass. You're violating the orders and spreading COVID." I agree. I agree with what you're saying. It's not as bad. Like, so you don't think that he should be fined for not wearing the mask?
Do I think he should be fined for not wearing a mask? See,
for not forcing his people. I'm sorry.
I actually don't know how I feel about fines and punitive measures like that. Obviously, I don't think somebody be thrown in prison for not wearing a mask because, number one, I think our prison system is overburdened as it is, and there's a lot of people violating mask orders. And number two, the last thing you need during a pandemic is to put more people into confined spaces, and there's been COVID instances spreading in prisons, which it's counterproductive.
Okay, but the point.
So now, when it comes to fines, it's difficult because you need to have some way to say, like, how do we make sure people follow it? You need to have some way to say, like, well, follow the law, or there's something in response. So I don't really know what to do in that, really what to say in that instance, but I guess I lean towards yes, but I mean,
well, then would you lean towards yourself being fined for violating the order?
Well, if I disagree with that part of the law, then no.
But
this is where my frustration comes, because like going back to what I said.
I would like to explain my answer first, though.
Let's give him a chance to answer. Come on.
Yeah. So the thing is, I can agree with one law to respond to a crisis and disagree with another. Let's say we had a huge food shortage in this country, and I thought that was bad. I think most of us would also agree it'd be bad if there was a huge food shortage and everybody was starving. And the government passed a bunch of laws, and one law was rationing. And, so there's heated debate about whether you should be forced to ration because of freedom or whatever. But let's say I say, for whatever reason, that I think rationing and the government mandated rationing is necessary for us all to survive, and it's good. But then the government also says, and we're going to force gastric bypass surgery over anyone over 200 pounds. And then I'm like, that is ridiculous. I am not going to give you my body for you to do gastric bypass surgery. But then someone else says, but Dylan, you were fine with them doing the rationing. And I'd be like, yeah, because I agree with that law. I thought that was a necessary and fine measure in this instance, but I disagree with that law. It's the same here. I agree with the mask mandate because I think that's a necessary, easy step that most people can take. I don't agree with the restriction on public demonstrations if they're done with masks outside and try to do their best to be 6 feet apart.
But here's the difference. The analogy that you're giving through a different law, it's different because the criticism that you're having is that you think he's stupid because he is violating what you perceive to be common sense things that could stop spreading a COVID pandemic.
Yes.
The same is true about not engaged in large gatherings. That's a common sense thing that not only scientists say, but people just understand that if you avoid large gatherings, then you have a better chance of stopping the spread of COVID.
Well, listen, I believe these things should be done responsibly. Same with the businesses. I believe small businesses can be run properly. This might be a huge shocker. I might get canceled for this.
Man, I don't know.
I have done research. For instance, I have eaten out at dinner. Shocker, right? But I researched the business beforehand. It was a business I supported. I made sure that they had social distance. I made sure they had plexiglass. I made sure they have everything. I went out and ate. It's not something I do often. I did it once. Same thing with protesting. I also did that once. I knew that this is probably something that if there is an opportunity to do it responsibly, it's not going to show its face very often. So I should take the opportunity when I have it.
But again, But again, the problem is this: like when you liken it to things like climate change and things like that, you're saying, but I believe there's evidence, there's a consensus for climate change. There is a scientific consensus to not gather in large crowds. That exists. You're saying that I have made the decision upon myself that I think it's worthwhile to violate that scientific consensus.
Yes, I have. I mean, for instance, any interaction between two people could produce a COVID case. There could a COVID spreading, right? If me and you are even 6 feet apart, even with a mask, even with all these protections,
right,
you could still catch it. It's still possible. But by adding those barriers and having these barriers and sometimes mandated, you can help reduce the probability of them happening. And so I think in this instance of the protesting, we've put so many barriers in my idea of how these protests should go. You've put so many barriers in the way that you can help do it the most responsible. But that's and the same thing goes for his business. I believe he should be able to run it if he does 6 feet apart, cleans all his equipment, and has the masks. But he's not even willing to do the masks.
But what you're saying is your personal belief outweighs what the advice from scientists are.
Well,
yes, the scientists are telling us not to gather in large gatherings. You're saying, well, I think as long as we take other precautions that I'm comfortable with, that it's okay to go against the wishes and the recommendation of scientists. That gentleman's making the exact same calculus. He's just disagreeing on which one of those two things.
Yeah, but I believe there's less data to back up what he's saying than what I'm saying. Now, when I talk about specifically, scientists have also said that when we talk about like COVID cases, that being outside, you're less likely to catch it, right? That is something that
that's true.
Same thing goes with masks. Same things would go with 6 feet apart. 6 feet's not a magic number, but it's an area around you're supposed to work. 5 feet, 7 feet, doesn't really matter. You need to keep a distance between you and other people. So these are things that scientists have said that are the best way to put barriers between you and them. And the government has taken the advice of scientists and have not made it so everybody is in a little like glass capsule where they don't interact with each other, because we all know that's unworkable. So we're trying to have a society in the most responsible way possible while still functioning as a society. That is why, because if we were just to take 100% what scientists say to save the most lives possible, we'd all be in little glass capsules where we don't spread COVID whatsoever. But I know that's unworkable. So I'm trying to see how we can have a society that is working, living, and breathing in the most responsible manner.
It's still hypocritical, because what it's saying is that's exactly that's what that gentleman is saying. You're sitting here saying it wouldn't be an impetus on him to wear.
No. He's not doing it responsibly, though. He's not.
But that's according to you. He would say that you're not protesting responsibly. He would say you could have always done things better. Yeah. You could have chose to stay at home. You could have had a virtual protest, but you chose to be irresponsible and violate social distance orders.
Virtual protest isn't a protest. You can't protest. What are you supposed to do?
What do you think's more important? Was attending that protest or keeping a business open?
That's a difficult question.
It's not.
What?
Well, no.
Oh, man.
Wait.
Jesus.
Wait. Are you kidding me? The foundation of our democracy is built upon free speech, and we're just going to throw that out the window just like that?
Well, but you could have your free speech in a way that doesn't need to occur in a mass gathering in the middle of a pandemic. Now, I'm for the protest. I actually am for it.
Like some fucking Chinese Communist Party stuff.
No, Chinese Communist Party stuff saying that you can't go to work.
There's 3 conservatives, 1 liberal right here.
Sure.
Okay? So you gotta let me expand on that.
Yeah, because I'm getting ready to. We gotta slow down a little.
Because the thing is, right? I believe that in order for our society to function properly, that free speech is just as important as economic prosperity. For example, I'd be willing to give up a lot of economic prosperity if it meant I kept my liberties in many instances, right? Now, there's enough that there's some things I'd be willing to regag on, like limit. For example, I'd be willing to put on a mask. I think that's not too much of an infringement on my liberty. I'd be willing to do certain things. But the freedom of speech, I think, is integral to everything we have in this country. I don't think our nation would be as economically prosperous if we didn't have these liberties. So I think free speech is a pillar of that economic prosperity that small businesses have built. And this is the type of, this is when I say it's like some Chinese Communist Party shit, is because they're saying we got to make sure we need to make sure, because let me explain it. Banned all these public protests from the Hong Kong protesters, but still make sure the businesses are churning out everything, because the economy is more important than these public gatherings. That's literally what they're doing in Hong Kong.
Okay. Now, so go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. So none of us, at least I am, I don't want to speak for anybody, but none of us are saying you don't have the right to protest. We're not saying that. At least I'm not saying that. What we're saying, or at least what I'm saying, is we're holding you accountable to what you believe, what your party believes as well. Being in gatherings of, what was it, like 10 or more, six? I work at a restaurant. We separate tables if it's larger than 6. Being in that close quarters with somebody is irresponsible, and it is wrong. And I don't believe it's wrong. I think you can do it. I think you should do it. I go out and protest. But what I'm saying is you're being hypocritical because your party agrees that it should not be a thing. But then at the same time, you're saying that it is wrong. It is wrong for these rules
I'm one actor within my party. Joe Manchin does not want to legalize marijuana. I do. That doesn't mean I need to defend Joe Manchin's position on marijuana. I can disagree with other Democrats. That's something I can do. Well, yeah, but there's also 3 people. I got to address points at a time, because you said one point. I'd like to finish my point, then you can finish. So the thing I disagree with here is that I believe in different levels of barriers. We can't have complete protection in the society. That's impossible for it to function unless we're going to have everybody stay home and interact with fucking nobody. And that's the way we stop COVID. But that's impossible to function as a society. So my limit for the amount of barriers is higher than his, but lower than other people's. Right?
Exactly.
So what I'm saying is he can say, well, you're fine with that. And I say, well, because I believe that we cannot actually change that model, or we can have some things in place, but we shouldn't ban that. And so if somebody comes out and is like, no large public gatherings outside, even if you put masks, anything of that on, not that, I disagree with that, because I have a different standard when it comes to the level of irresponsibility, when it comes to having safety protections. But I still believe that you're going to have some risk possible if we're going to function as a society. My standard is just different. And just for having a different standard doesn't make me a hypocrite, though. And
okay.
Before Robbie respond, Aftershock wanted to finish his point.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it just, what I was going to say, you pick and choose what to talk about. And that's where my frustration is coming from, because you're sitting here and you're saying that you don't believe in these mask mandates. Why aren't you talking about that?
Wait, no, I do believe in mask mandates.
I thought you just said that people shouldn't be fined.
I don't think they should put prison. I said I'm undecided, but I'm leaning towards yes, generally. Yes, they should generally be mandated to wear masks.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Can I say something right quick? Just right quick, right? Because there's hypocrisy on both sides right now, and I would like a chance to point it out.
Okay, and then Rob wanted to say something.
Because there's a clear example of when I think somebody should have stayed their ass at the fucking house, and everybody else would have been very, very happy with that. And that example is Kyle Rittenhouse, right? There's a whole topic of conversation about should he been there, should he not been there, blah, 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 blah. Was he acting responsibly? There's a whole conversation there, but the reality is if his ass would have just stayed home, everybody would have been happy with that. So in this instance, when it comes to trying to spread an event, going out to a protest, et cetera, maybe it's just better you stay your ass at the house.
And that's the difference. And the other thing with this businessman did, he had to do, because he had to make a living. You didn't have to go on this protest.
Well, you're right that I economically, physically didn't have to continue surviving. But if we're using that standard, then I believe.
But one is wrong and one is right.
Let me finish. I saw people, and you can say you have a different perspective on this. I saw people coming into my community, and then Rob has been wanting to say something for fucking forever. I'm sorry, Rob.
It's fine.
These are people and this is how I view it as a left-wing communist evil Democrat, as that they are coming in to my community in my general area that I was born and raised in to reject the results of a democratic election, tear down monuments put up by community members, and then desecrate church property before assaulting people. That's what I saw. That's what I saw there. And I was not going to stand by when that was done to my community. It didn't say, no, you're not returning to this community, you're not from this community, and you're coming in here doing this and that, that's wrong, right? I felt it was my moral duty to do that. Now, you can disagree with a perspective or a different way I put it, but looking through my lens, you can see how I see that is a crisis being faced by my community that I needed to go confront, right? Now, you can say I didn't need to do that, but I believed it was my moral duty to do that. As he believes, even though I disagree with him and this is moral duty to stand up against the mask mandate or whatever, right?
Right. Okay. So here's the point I want to make. Like, the idea that I'm saying free speech, like, it's kind of not accurately representing my position of saying that I don't see the importance of free speech. Of course, free speech is important. The point is, we both understand that there are times where free speech doesn't mean that we get to protest anywhere we want in any way we see fit at any time we want. Like, we understand it. For example, I can't burst into your house and offer a protest. And if you say, no, I don't want you here, me say, well, this country's founded on free speech. So the reason that I think being able to provide a livelihood is more important than going to a specific rally during a pandemic is because people's lives are in jeopardy, and they're even more susceptible to the pandemic if they're suffering economically. As we know, when it comes to diseases, the poor nutrition, the poor mental health people have for being poor, the poor access to healthcare, the poorer they are, all of those things would make a pandemic more likely to spread, in addition to severe other physical and mental health costs that would come with it. So there is no doubt to me that the ability to actually be allowed to go to work and provide a living for your family is not only more important than the ability to attend a specific protest, it's self-identifiably so, and it's also a form of free speech in its own right. So any restrictions placed on their ability to operate their businesses they see fit is in some effect an ability at limiting their free speech. So you can't claim to be a free speech purist because you're actually saying there should be. Well, right. So
it's important, but I'm not a purist.
Okay, but that's the point I'm making. So the idea, I just want to make it clear for anyone listening, the idea that somehow I don't care about free. Both of us are on the same platform. That we understand there needs to be some, preferably as minimal as possible, limits placed on speech at some point. We're disagreeing.
I believe the same thing about businesses, which is why I believe in the mask mandate, and why I believe when people go out and do speeches, they should be required to wear masks, stay 6 feet apart, and do it outside. Those are reasonable restrictions that I believe should be placed on protests, and reasonable restrictions that should be placed on businesses. While we agree, fist bump, I love you.
But what comes into play then is who gets to determine what's reasonable. And I'm saying that I view, as much as you say, well, I choose to think that he's a dumbass for doing this, and that there should possibly be fines for him for doing this.
He doesn't have a standard. There's no standard.
Sure he does.
Okay, what's the standard?
His standard was, he said originally when this occurred, that they tried to listen to everything that they were told by the experts. The experts did not tell him that he had to force people to wear masks. They originally said you need to operate at 20% capacity. You need to make sure that you're wiping down machines and do these things. He complied with that. Despite that compliance and no evidence that his shop was causing any cases of COVID whatsoever, they still chose to shut his business down. He couldn't afford to live with his business shut down, so he decided to keep operating. Then he was fined over and over to the tune of over $1 million. Now he's not going to tell people. In fact, to my understanding, perhaps you could tell me if I'm wrong, has he ever been mandated to make them wear masks?
I would assume so. If they were shutting down his business.
No, I don't believe he has. I don't believe gyms have been they shut down the business. They never mandated him to make people wear masks. They said you can't operate your business. Right.
He should have done it on his own accord.
But why?
Because I believe it keeps people safer.
I think
it's a reasonable barrier that doesn't place a lot of burden on the business.
All right, but it's also a reasonable barrier to say that people could avoid protesting while COVID cases are spiking.
I don't believe so.
That's exactly the point, and that's what makes you.
But that's because I called that dumb because I have my own opinion, and you're calling me dumb for doing that because you have your own opinion. But that doesn't make me a hypocrite because I have a different standard than you. That's different. If you want to believe I'm wrong about COVID or whatever, that's fine. But it's not hypocritical for me to have different standards because my standard is universal. Outside, mask, 6 feet. So
well, I would agree with you if you weren't saying that he should probably be fined.
So see, but that's a different thing from being hypocritical, though.
Because it's hypocritical to say, I believe that it's important that people follow the guidelines set forth by scientists to prevent COVID, and the only way we could enforce those scientific beliefs is by a fining process. However, I choose to violate these orders.
you know how you listen to me, and I know you listen to me, and you saw how kind of I don't know how I feel about that. I was about it, but I generally lean towards it. So it's not I believe you should be fine, and it's the only way to do it. I didn't say that. I felt uncomfortable about it.
You did feel uncomfortable, but you said there has to be a legal mechanism.
There has to be a legal mechanism. Maybe there's other legal mechanisms. Maybe there's other things that could be put forward. I really don't know, but I do think there has to be a consequence. But it's uncomfortable for me placing fines on the backs of people who are already feeling the economic strain of a recession combined with a pandemic. That's why I felt uncomfortable with it. Right? That's why I felt uncomfortable with it. But I also know that there has to be something done in that instance there. So I still don't see, if you want to disagree with me on that, that's fine. But that's not what I'm debating with you right now. I'm debating with you about this claim of hypocrisy.
Well, okay, I still think it's. I wanted to say something though that you brought up, the fact that 94% of Black Lives Matter rallies were peaceful, and therefore only the negative coverage was coming forward. It is undoubtable that the vast majority of the mainstream media and tech coverage of this has been pro Black Lives Matter. In addition to the vast majority. Right, and even when they have shown scenes, like, you understand, there's not a lot of newsworthiness like in the Black Lives Matter protests that occurred in my town, right? But there are things like that occur every day where people are standing up and speaking on the behalf of a cause, and there's no violence or sensationalism. Of course, there's going to be more focus put on when there's violence and sensationalism because that's the bigger story. But in the context of this, it is clear that the media is still making excuses for the movement as a whole in a way that they don't do for other movements that would see 6% of that movement be engaged in violent activity. For example, look at the difference of the treatment that Black Lives Matter got to the Tea Party. Now, the Tea Party was treated as... Go ahead.
So you do admit, though, that there's disproportionate coverage placed upon violent BLM protests in comparison to peaceful BLM protests, meaning there's a disproportionate amount of violence shown to what's actually occurring in comparison to the peaceful protests, which are 94%.
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense if you're talking about one specific rally to another, but no when you're talking about the movement in general. So, for example, was the rally in Clarion, Pennsylvania that was peaceful covered as much as the rally in Minneapolis that burnt down a police precinct? No, I'll fully agree with that. But was the negative coverage in the media talking about the violence that occurred? 6% over 200-something incidents, which is a huge amount, which would be the biggest story in the world if it was any other movement. Was that covered proportionally to how often the same media companies reported how great this movement was? Not even close. In fact, if you follow people like Michael Tracy that went city to city where these Black Lives Matter rallies occurred, he said it was appalling how no one was telling the stories of the people that lost their businesses in these riots. They were virtually uncovered. The only places that were covering them were just saying, look, Fox News is covering the violence again. That was the majority of the coverage discussing the violence.
I'm familiar with Michael Tracy. I don't know why that name rings a bell, but why is it that name does ring a bell? It's not positive bell, but it rings a bell. I don't remember where.
It's a left-wing journalist that traveled the country going to all these small cities that had Black Lives Matter rallies.
Tracy. Sorry, I just...
Sure.
Oh, wait. I just want to figure out who it... Oh, there it is. Michael. Oh, yeah, I do follow him. Yeah. God, well, I remember that. I'm sorry.
It's fine. But it's... I mean, are you denying that the vast majority of the media and tech companies' coverage of this has been positive of Black Lives Matter?
Let me think about that for a second. I would say that the media is generally lefty, more left-leaning. Even if I do think there's strong Republican and like right-wing established media as well, but I would think it was generally left-leaning. So it's generally going to say positive things about the BLM movement, but it does cover disproportionately, and I would say extremely disproportionately, even though you would disagree with me on that. When rioting occurs, and I would say that the right-wing established part of the media barely ever covers BLM protests when it's in a peaceful manner.
But you would say that for any protest, right? And again, the idea is not they didn't cover for. We're talking about. Yeah, according to the evidence that
if my movement's 94% doing good thing, and the 6% that does bad thing is all that 6% all that's being shown by the opposition. You can see how I'm like, well, that's fucked, right?
But think of it this way. The 6%, we're not talking about 100 rallies. 94 of them were good and 6 were bad. Even if that was the case, that proportion
about thousands of rallies.
Right. So the Stanford's, I believe it's Stanford that's the 6%.
Largest movement in history, yeah.
Right. I believe it's Stanford that's talking, where you're getting the 94%. It was a Stanford study, which showed it was 227 specific locations of violence that occurred during Black Lives Matter rallies. Now, that number, 227, that's more than 4 per state of riots that occurred over a period of 4 months, 4 to 6 months. Yeah. And that's just locations. So if a place like Portland had riots 90 days in a row, that only counted as 1, right? So the idea that was covered proportional to what it actually meant is absurd. If the Tea Party had riots that occurred in 220 something places, but there were a lot of little Tea Party rallies in little cities and stuff that didn't get violent, you wouldn't be saying, wow, it's an outrage. They're covering the violence at the Tea Party rallies. In fact, how many times do the Proud Boys get together and meet? You didn't seem to cover the majority of times when they get together and meet, which I assume doesn't result in violence, but you were very concerned about the time that they came to D.C., and you thought that warranted coverage. It's the exact same way. But the Proud Boys always get negative coverage.
Let's be fair about that, though. If they came to my city and just had a normal everyday meeting and I covered that, then sure. But the one time they come to my city, or every time they come to my city, it seems, after yesterday's fiasco, it seems they don't interact peacefully with my community. So what perspective am I supposed to have?
Did Black Lives Matter? When Black Lives Matter was in D.C., did they ever enact violence?
They sometimes did, and you know what? I said it was bad when that happened too.
Okay, so but it's clear that it was treated far differently in the mainstream media.
Well, no, it was covered very vehemently in the D.C. area, and in fact, I mean, like the D.C. police definitely acted with pretty hard jurisprudence towards them. Jurisprudence, I think that's the wrong word, but aggressively towards them.
But most of the, I mean,
as somebody who lives in D.C., this was covered pretty heavily when it went bad, comparison to when it was mostly good, because the majority of the time during the day it was perfectly fine.
It is undoubtable in the national media that the overwhelming coverage of Black Lives Matter has been positive, despite it being a movement that over 4 per state had violent riots that occurred in locations. That is a number that you can't
move. We've been going for like almost an hour and a half now, and I do want to move it back to whether I'm a hypocrite or not, because this isn't what I was prepared to have a conversation about.
Okay, that's fine. But this kind of goes, like, the issue that I had with the Black Lives Matter and the thing you were protesting was, one, it seems hypocritical to call people a dumbass for violating social distance orders and then choosing to violate social distance orders yourself. I understand you're saying that there is a difference, which I will give you this benefit of the doubt. You seem to be hesitant to want to advocate punishment on the very gym owner that you're calling a dumbass, which is better than many other people that are saying that he deserves the fines he's getting and things like that.
Let me ask you a question then.
Sure.
Let's say I smoke weed, but Polar goes kicks a puppy, right? Polar kicks a puppy, right? Polar, why would you do that? For shame, Polar. Why would you do that? But he does it, right? Now, let's say I broke the law, he broke the law, but let's say I say, well, I'm against all these anti-marijuana drug control. I think that's bad, but I'm against that, so I think my broken the law was perfectly fine. I'm able to put thumbs up to that. But Polar breaking the law and kicking the puppy, I believe laws against kicking puppies are perfectly allowed to be placed in. Now, am I a hypocrite because in both I believe that people should be penalized for breaking the law? Why I break the law myself? It depends on which law. In my opinion, it would depend on which law was broken and if I agree with that law. Where I agree with him making people wear masks, I believe that is a law I agree with, but I don't agree with the banning of protest if they have certain restrictions done in place, masks 6 feet apart outside.
Did anybody at your protest, did every single person have a mask and social distance?
I would say this actually was baffling to me when I was there. I saw 3 or 4 Trump protesters or Trump Millie MAGA people with masks, and it was actually baffling to me. I did see people who weren't wearing masks, and you want to know what I said to them? Put on a fucking mask. Or people would walk up to them like, put on a fucking mask. That happened a lot, actually.
So Dylan, are the health experts saying, what do you call it? Insert rule here. Do this. Don't do this. Do this. and don't do this? Or are they saying, don't do this unless you do this? Which one are they saying?
I mean, you just said health experts broadly. That's a really that's a large blanket. I mean,
use your own health experts that you're going by.
My own.
Yeah, because all of them are saying don't go into large crowds, wear a mask, stay inside. They're not saying don't be in huge gatherings unless you're wearing a mask. They're not saying that. Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Which one are they saying?
Which one are they? I'm trying to do you? Are you talking like Fauci? Are you talking like because there's
anyone you agree with?
Because there's certain health experts, and I don't have a name to give you. Neither of us have names to give each other because again, I wasn't expecting this right at this time. But there's some experts who are who are calculating economic effects with health effects and are saying, so how do we make a running economy in the most safe and effective way possible? And those are the people I generally agree with because they also know economic devastation can cause its own host of problems, can actually cause more death and destruction down the line through the implementation of poverty. So I mean, I would say it depends on the expert. I mean, a lot of those just become recommendations.
But that's not the standard you gave earlier. You gave the standard of basically all scientists having a consensus on certain things. And I think that if you're honest, you will see that
on certain things, right? But it changes from expert to expert whether certain things should be completely banned or these certain restrictions should be placed instead. For example, there are some experts who are like small businesses and restaurants can operate if they have this and this in place, and that makes sense. While others are like, no, throw them out.
The overwhelming, would you deny with this statement, the overwhelming consensus of scientific experts that are trying to come up with strategies against COVID recommend avoiding large gatherings?
Overwhelmingly recommend avoiding all large gatherings generally. I would agree with that.
Right. Okay. That's the point that I'm making then. So yes, you could cherry pick and say, well, there are specific ones that say that's not the case. That's true. There are also specific ones that say that there are problems with masks. And in fact, again, I'm not talking about kooks that just say, oh, masks don't work because I'm a conservative. I already cited one. I've read several doctors that say that actually there is a problem with masks. And that problem is people thinking that masks allow them to violate the most important strategy, which is the social distancing. And so they say, as long as I have a mask on, it's okay for me to not listen to the social distance part of it. And that's dangerous. The idea of masks should be you should stay at home as much as possible. But if you have to go out in public because you need food or you're attending a medical appointment, then you should make sure you wear that mask. There are credible doctors saying this. And so the idea that you're like, well, I'm willing to go against the consensus when it comes to the social distancing, but I criticize people that go against what I see as the consensus when it comes against masks. That's the hypocritical part. Because you don't... Go ahead.
The difference is, in this instance, right, it is I acknowledge that any interaction between human beings could produce an instance where COVID is produced. And experts acknowledge that. And they say to have as little interaction with other people as possible. But does that mean, Rob, that we should shut down the police department? We should shut down the fire department? We should shut down anything where people interact? Shut all that? No, it doesn't mean that. And most people would agree that those proposals are ridiculous. My standard for how far we should take these recommendations is different. And my standard is that most of these that I'm talking about right now are not our standards that will allow a lot of the economy to continue to function while also allowing us to probably save lives down the line. And that's the difference. You can say it's hypocritical because I'm rejecting one thing. I'm not rejecting the consensus. I'm just saying that it's too much of a burden for us to completely just stop these interactions. But you would say, but he believes the masks are a burden. And I would say that doesn't make any sense. How is it a burden?
Because it is. How? Why should it? It is a burden. An individual, your criticism.
That mask, does it
well, listen, your criticism with this business owner isn't that he's not wearing a mask, right? That's not your criticism.
Him and his customers.
Your criticism is he's not forcing other people to wear a mask. And yes, it is a burden on people to force people to do something that's against their will. That is a burden.
Well,
Absolutely. Do you think it would be a burden on you?
It wouldn't be against the will because they could just turn around and go home.
So could you?
I could, but I was willing to take on the burden, put on the mask, stay 6 feet apart, and I agree with that burden being placed on me.
But Dylan,
I disagree with
your apples and oranges here, because you're comparing going to a protest and opening your business to make a living. That's what you're talking about, your fire department and like all these businesses and stuff. That's not the same thing as going out to a protest, dude.
Well, yes,
that's my thing.
Yeah, of course, obviously, being a firefighter and going to a protest is very different. But I believe they're also both important for the continued prosperity of our democracy, and what makes us different than the dictatorships.
Dictatorships also say that you have to.
We shouldn't lose that.
Right, and what dictatorships do that's an even bigger example of this is they arbitrarily enforce laws to allow their political allies to not have to follow orders while they force them as stringent as possible on people that disagree with them politically. That's also a sign of a dictatorship, which is exactly what we see happening.
But the difference would be that I am saying that law shouldn't be in place, not that should be enforced on them. Because if that was the case, I would say, well, the pro-Trump people who came, they should all be arrested. I was standing up for the good thing, so I'm fine. That's not. But
again, the difference is this: you admit that you're not an epidemiologist, right? You admit that you're going against scientific consensus that says that you should avoid large gatherings. You just think that it's worthwhile for you to avoid large gatherings, and you personally don't feel that the mask is a burden on you. Other people that disagree, I don't think it seems hypocritical to me to say, I feel like I have the intelligence to make these decisions and to make opinions on what I find to be a level of burden that's acceptable.
I'm a coastal elite. That's why. But
coastal?
The difference. Yeah, I'm a coastal elite. I live in Maryland. Maryland's a coastal
How close to the
state.
Coast do you have to be considered coastal? Can you get fresh crab on a daily basis?
If I wanted to, yeah.
That'd be coastal.
Yeah, I'm like an hour away from actually like 30 to 40 minutes away from the ocean. So that's close to coastal. Fuck, I completely, after I call myself a liberal elitist. Well, you fly over states, who cares? But the difference is in here, and I understand. I want to respond to Aftershock because Aftershock says something, you said something, and then
sure.
Aftershock. The difference is when we talk about. You're talking about these protests, which are different because of the businesses, and these businesses hold up the economy. Where these things, I believe, and you can disagree with me when it comes to this idea of bucking consensus. I am taking into account what they're saying, that large public gatherings are something that should generally be avoided. Right? I agree with that, but I believe some instances are so grave that they are instances or something that's so important to our democracy that should be allowed. For example. I think concerts, while they could be done responsibly, I think that's something that I would generally more avoid myself. Why? Because I don't think that's something that concert isn't necessarily integral to holding up the democracy. I think free speech is the foundation of it. And so I do think it can be done responsibly, as I do think a business being open can be done responsibly. My difference, again, has to lie with the level of burden. Now, you believe that this isn't a burden. This is a burden because you're forcing people to do something to their employees. I don't think it's a real financial burden, besides the fact that if there is somebody... Let me finish. There's the only instance where this could be a financial burden is somebody comes in, says, I don't want to wear a mask, fuck you, and they go home and then you lost a customer. That would be the biggest financial burden you could place here. That is true. For me personally, though, I also see it as probably a bigger financial burden generally to not nip this in this bud now than to have to deal with it down the line as it gets worse and worse and worse as our healthcare systems are overburdened. Because that does happen in many instances. You can go back to different pandemics and pandemics that affected this country before, and that when the healthcare systems get overburdened, the hospitals overflow, and generally everyone is affected, because if you get sick in any instance, it might be difficult for you to find a hospital bed. And so I think generally for the economy overall, it makes sense for us to have certain restrictions placed on businesses for the long-term health and security of our economy and of our people, right? Now, I believe we also need to have a functioning economy to some degree, though, right? We have to if we're going to all survive through this. And so certain restrictions placed on protests, which I also think are integral for the long-term health of our economy and businesses, health, 6 feet, clean equipment, outside, for example, with the protest. These are things that could be placed and I think are not large burdens enough to crumble an economy. And there's going to be, and I will admit that if maybe there is somewhere where everybody who's going to your business is like, you know what? If you make me put on a mask, I'm not going to go to your business anymore. That fucking sucks. You know what else I believe in? I believe in sponsoring these businesses through the pandemic. So if they don't want to be open, sign up, get a certain amount of money a month, and your business runs on its own. You just let the money flow through. Done with it. Get paid to close your business down.
Okay, well, it's clear that that's not sustainable, but that's not a question of hypocrisy.
Why is that not sustainable?
How long do you think? So what? For example, Bill Gates says that he's recommending that we would have to be locked down for at least another year. How long can we keep every business in the country open?
I mean, Elon Musk said fucking 10 jillion years. It doesn't matter to me. That's one person.
Okay, so then let me just ask you. By sustainable, I mean it's not sustainable indefinitely. So how long do you think we have the ability to pay every bit? So give me the idea. How long?
Fuck, I can't tell you a certain amount of time, but I would say that this is something, if we were to do this, and it would have to be done, obviously, within a certain period of time, so that you could maybe do this, finish this in like 1 to 3 to 5, most possibly 6, but I'm just like, I'm throwing you a ballpark number here. I'm not an economist.
6 what?
Months.
That's
I don't know that we have enough money to keep every business in the country running for 6 months.
Not every business. It would be certain businesses that would want to sign up to this. Obviously, I mean, this is just like, I'm just spitballing here.
I'm not right.
No longer a conversation about hypocrisy. This is just me
right. I agree with that, and whether or not that would strategically works different than the idea of hypocrisy. Look, so let me ask you that. So it would be your claim that you fully think that this gentleman's business should be allowed to be open. You just think that everyone should have to wear a mask.
That's generally my belief. Yeah.
Okay, so if the governor would have said that, as opposed to, oh no, even if you wear a mask, you're not allowed to be open, do you think that could have changed the calculus of this business owner?
I think it probably could have.
Okay.
But even if that's the case, I still think even if the governor was the biggest prick on the planet, that he should have taken into consideration the general health of the public and had his people wear masks, even if it isn't mandated, or even if he was treated badly. Because I think it's a responsibility of every citizen to think of the well-being of their fellow citizens through trying to slow down or stop the spread of this virus.
Well, and again, that's the part where I think that it looks as if you're a hypocrite. Because literally anybody could say the exact same thing about you. You chose to go against scientific consensus because you thought it was important.
My standard is different.
Your standard's different to you, but this is the problem.
His standard's different of not having any standard whatsoever.
The difference is
he doesn't have a health standard. He doesn't have any.
Yes, he does.
Okay, what is his different standard right now?
So, for example, he said originally when he was shut down that they had bought. I would assume that he's operating under the same things, that they're encouraging social distance while they're there, that they're limiting capacity, that they've bought hand sanitizer and are being hygienic, wiping down the machines more than they normally would. Like
he's doing all that, but not the masks.
Yes. Because the difference is the mask is forcing people to do something. I don't think he's telling people they can't wear a mask. He's saying, I'm not going to force them to wear a mask.
Can I be honest? Can I be 100% honest here? That just makes me think he's... Oh, this is going to be... I'm not going to say that because that sounded really mean. That makes me feel like he's more foolish than I originally thought then. Because then he realizes the general health risk that everyone faces. But one of the most basic things that we've been like talking about for almost like a year now is one of the things he doesn't want to do because it's forcing people to do that. So he's recommending 6 feet apart, but not like telling his people to be 6 feet apart. I mean, like, so these are, he understands the general, like how this would generally help, but he's not doing it. He's
saying this would be, okay, let me say, I don't know exactly what he's saying, obviously, right? But this is my interpretation of what I think he's saying. He's saying, Dylan has made judgments on what he thinks is important and his value system. And when that allows him to say, I'm going to ignore the suggestion of scientists. He's saying the difference between you and him is you say you should be allowed to do that, but other people shouldn't. And he's saying everybody should be allowed to make the decision that they think's best for themselves. I will do my part when it comes to providing as close as I can without ordering other people to do something, a safe environment. But I am not going to infringe on people's rights by forcing them to do something against their will.
1 second. Okay, so I was looking something up. So I guess the difference is that I believe that people should be, in this instance, forced to do something if it's better for everybody else when it comes to these certain things like masks, because I don't believe making somebody wear a mask is that big of an infringement on their liberties or freedoms, I do think that is something that we should force people to do. Same way we force people to not speed, for example. I believe speeding is something the government should be allowed to force you not to do, because I don't think you shouldn't be allowed to, like, I don't know, take risky options, but because that risky decision you're making impacts other people. Same with COVID and when it comes to the restrictions with masks.
But the exact same thing could be said of you violating social distance orders.
But my standards are different. My standards are how much risk I'm willing to take. For example, it is risky, period, for me to get in a car, right? Because, a crash could happen. But I think for society to properly function, that's a risk I'm willing to take.
Now, let me be quite clear here and just say the difference between me and you is I fall into the category. I would never once blame you for spreading COVID. If I don't want to get COVID, I wouldn't attend that rally. I didn't attend that rally because, well, I disagree with the rally and I don't live in DC, but also because I'm around people that have severe comorbidities, which is why I've tried to social distance and wear a mask and things like that, because it was my choice. So I think that people should make the choices that are best for them to keep themselves and their loved ones safe. If you want to go out to the Black Lives Matter rally or the Trump rally, if you want to go to your place of business, if you want to open your restaurant, if you want to wear a mask, or if you don't want to, I think you should be able to do any of it. The difference is this. You're saying, I think that my standards are what should apply, and other people's standards, they're stupid if they have standards that they've also set that are also going against scientific consensus. That's the hypocrisy. You don't know for certain if masks work or not. You don't know for certain if Black Lives Matter spread COVID or not. You have your opinions, but you're not an epidemiologist. You're relying on the suggestion of scientists. Yeah. That's how you're getting your opinion. Those scientists are telling you to avoid large gatherings. You say it's worthwhile for me to not listen to the scientists in that regard. That business owner is saying it is worth for me to listen to their regard on forcing people to wear masks, because I believe in this country that individuals don't have the right to take people's freedom away and force them to do things that they don't want. Well, so you're both just using your own standards. That's what makes you a hypocrite, to say that he shouldn't be allowed to use his own standard, but you should be allowed to use your own standard.
Well, yeah, because people have different standards, right? And I believe my standard is what's going to keep more people safe, so I believe that's the one should be enforced. I mean, this is what all politics is to different standards or different things. Like, I believe marijuana should be illegal. Well, I believe it should be for the law. This is the whole debate is around, like, what should and what shouldn't be illegal, what should and shouldn't be enforced. And my standard is different than his, but I believe my standard is the one that should be enforced. Also, I'm looking at the CDC website right now, and when I'm looking here, it is generally saying, giving you certain recommendations on how to hold large events, how to hold these gatherings, and it has like a sliding scale of what's the highest risk and what's higher risk, more risk, and lowest risk, right? Lowest risk is like virtual only events, gatherings, and such. Highest risk is like large in-person inside environments where people are less than 6 feet apart and they don't have a lot of room to move, and there's not like where for air to escape. That's the highest possible risk, right? This is a generally sliding scale of how much risk, right? And so what this is implying right here, when you look at the CDC guidelines, and I'll post this. I was about to say I posted it in my chat. I can't post it in my chat. I'll see if I can post it in general. I'm not streaming. If I post this in my Discord, if anybody else wants to
on the general, that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, it's in my general chat. Yeah. So if I take a decent look at this, right, and I can see that they have different guidelines, and one of these things is generally avoiding larger gatherings. But one other thing is anything above virtual only activities, events, and gatherings, anything above that, according to this, if we're using the standard here, that anybody believes that any kind of COVID restriction should be enforced, means that everything should have to go by virtual-only activities, events, and gatherings, which everyone knows is impossible for society to accept. So I believe certain laws should be put in place that can keep us in the lowest risk, more risk, and for very certain scenarios that are very important, higher risk, but not like, for example, highest risk. It is my standard that I'm willing to have enforced on society generally. Right? I have a different standard for public safety and what should be the laws than different people. This is what all of politics is about, right?
Okay, but
and me being able to say that I acknowledge that there's a risk to it, but it's necessary, is not hypocritical if I think that this is a risk that I think people should be willing to take, and this is a risk that people should not be willing to take. For example, I believe people should be able to take the risk to drive where they want, which is a risk. It is a risk to get in a car. You might get in a car accident, might crash into somebody else, but I don't think people should be able to take the risk to speed or drive while drunk or any different of this. Am I a hypocrite by saying I care about car crashes, but I want people to be allowed to drive? No, I have a different standard with how much risk I will allow within society for this specific issue. Same goes to COVID.
Okay, but even using the scale in the article that you just gave, the risk pool that it's discussing is talking about the size of the gathering. So there is no doubt that when it comes to just the size of the gathering, which is what they're using to determine the criteria, the CDC is using to determine the criteria for the risk pool of this, clearly the gathering you're attending was far larger than the 20% capacity that gym's operating at. So that's again what makes, so you're choosing to engage in something that
this isn't an argument against me being hypocritical, though. This is an argument about me having a higher standard for this one specific area because I think it's integral, right? Or I don't think the masks and telling people to wear masks and the being people not doing that isn't integral. This is the different standards. This isn't, you can disagree with me, but that's not an argument for me being hypocritical.
Well, but you just said that we should enforce rules and regulations or laws, I don't know the exact term you used, that would eliminate the highest tier. The highest tier would be large gatherings.
Large in-person inside gatherings where people can't stand 6 feet apart.
It says large in-person gatherings where it's difficult for individuals to remain spaced at least 6 feet apart. There is no doubt that the vast majority of Black Lives Matter rallies, including the one you attended, made it very difficult to stand 6 feet apart. There is, even if you went out of your way to attempt.
I got maced and was able to stand 6 feet apart.
Okay, do you think the majority of the people were 6 feet?
Is when I tried to help somebody who was had their head bashed in by a Proud Boy. That was the only time I didn't.
But clearly,
if I may jump in too. I'd like to add.
We generally. The only people who I'm kind of allowing to talk.
Yeah, this is not a thing for you, Bones.
Leave him say. He might have something to say.
Yeah, you can.
Okay,
it's fine.
if you want to say something.
Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry about that, but yeah, I knew people who did attend like Black Lives Matter rallies in like my local town and around that were able to stand like 6 feet apart. And generally in outdoor settings, you do have a lot more of an ability to stand 6 feet apart from others that you can't really afford in small, or in buildings or in enclosed areas.
Do you guys think the vast majority of the time these protests were happening, people were 6 feet apart or closer?
CTV establishing himself as moderator this time since it's a 2v2.
Also, just while you think about that, let me just,
and anybody can kind of comment at this point if we're letting both.
Sure. So just to be sure, using your own information that you gave us, it says large in-person gatherings where it's difficult for individuals to remain spaced at least 6 feet apart. Mm-hmm. Protests. Also, promoting healthy.
It's not difficult. It's not difficult to stand 6 feet apart in a protest. No, it isn't. Because I did
almost every single coverage that had any kind of protest, everyone was squeezed together yelling.
Yeah, because that's when the fights happen. And you know what? It's hard.
No, that's not what I'm referring to.
Let me look. It's hard for me to stay spaced out when I get attacked. Somehow I was still able to do it. But just because somebody else doesn't do it in a responsible manner doesn't mean I didn't do it in a responsible manner, or the way I did it was hypocritical if I did it in a manner that I thought was safe.
Which is exactly why it was irresponsible for you to attend it, because you could have gotten sick as well and then spread it to people you know.
I stood
the whole time.
Wait, well, if this is the standard we're using, then me doing anything outside my house or interacting with anybody is irresponsible. What do you mean?
No, because you and I both know that the vast majority of the time you were there, you were not 6 feet apart from everybody. Come on, Dylan.
Vast majority, no, that's 100% true. I can give you footage. Okay, so you're telling me that I was willing to stay 6 feet apart while I was getting maced, but I was not willing to stay 6 feet apart from people during the other times when I wasn't getting maced.
Yeah.
Well, then you believe in my ability to take pain a lot more than I do.
Look, the point is this. Well, hold on. This is where I'll agree with Aftershock is it's just absurd and not in reality to pretend that the majority of these Black Lives Matter rallies have had people spread 6 feet up. Go to Google, type in Black Lives Matter, and check out the first 1,000 pictures.
Come on.
I'm saying, well, number one, that's not science.
But can I finish what I was saying real quick? Maybe you can respond to it as well while you're talking about that. Also, promoting healthy behaviors that reduce spread as well. Right under that, staying home when appropriate. Hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. Was everybody there having Germex? Was everybody there wearing gloves? Was everybody there wearing face shields? Masks. I guarantee you not everyone was wearing a mask. Adequate supplies.
We called people out for not wearing masks. We called people out for not wearing masks. We said, hey, you're a fucking idiot. Put on a mask, you dipshit. That's how we interact with people who didn't wear masks. That's literally how we did it. If people were putting us at danger by not wearing masks, we had them wear masks. It's different stance. And you know what? When appropriate, I think protesting because a bunch of people are going to come in and vandalize our community's property and beat people up and start fucking stabbing people. I think that's a pretty appropriate situation for me to want to go out and protest. That's appropriate for me. I'm standing up for my community. I think that's morally appropriate.
Man, that was such a great defense of Kyle Rittenhouse right there, though.
Sure. Yeah. She should have stayed home. Fuck it. Cleaning and disinfection, restrooms, ventilation. Oh well, ventilation. Yeah, that's fine. You guys had that. Also, what were you? What did you say before that? Sorry, I had something to respond. What you said?
I don't know. I'm responding to like a lot right now.
Okay. Shit. I had it. Yeah, someone else.
This feels like one of those like WWE matches where they like building up the new monster. Where there's one person is like, well, he didn't want to face one person a day. He has to face two people.
Okay, so let me ask you this: when you went to where you were deciding to go to these protests, did you think everybody was going to stay 6 feet apart, wear masks, bring Germex, bring face shields, and no. Did you think that? So then why did you go? Do you not consider it at least a little bit irresponsible for you to go?
A little bit irresponsible.
At least?
Not considering the stakes, no.
Did you tell everyone, you said you told people that weren't wearing masks that they should wear masks. Did you tell people that you saw walking side by side that they should be 6 feet apart?
Did I tell people?
Regardless, you knew people were going to break those things, and you still went, and you still can admit that it was responsible to go.
This risk to my community was greater than me having to have every single mandate put in there. Not to mention the fact that, again, my standards can be. None of this is a statement of hypocrisy. I mean, I don't know if you're like hardcore like restrictions on COVID. This is not. I've still failed to see how this is like. I legitimately fail to see how this is hypocritical for me to believe in certain restrictions shouldn't be enforced and other restrictions.
Because you can break rules and he can't. That's why.
Because what do you mean I can break rules and he?
Because you can go to these protests, break everything that the health experts are saying, which I even used the information you gave us. You broke all of those. And it was okay for you to do it to send a message, as opposed to this person. What?
Ventilation, mask, 6 feet apart. I didn't break any of those.
Let's bring it.
If you can,
staying at home when appropriate. Hand hygiene. Not everyone was wearing masks. Not everyone was staying home.
You just said I broke all of them.
Oh,
which is incorrect.
Okay, yeah, that was my bad. You broke most of them.
I broke,
and it was okay for you to do it. Okay, half. Let's go with half. Sure, I'll even grant you that. You still broke them, and it was okay for you to do it. You believe it was okay for you to do it, to send a message just to be at this protest when you were at high risk by your own information of spreading COVID, but this man wasn't allowed to do that, and he was just running his business trying to make a living.
He broke the standards that I think should be enforced by law, not the ones that don't.
Right, that's what makes you a hypocrite.
So you provide all of this.
Okay, Rob. If you smoke
because you send us information. No, hold on, real quick. You send us this information, and you're only picking and choosing which ones should be allowed. That's just insane.
That's how governments make policy. They have experts make recommendations, and then the governments pick and choose which one should be made law.
So you give us information on what health experts say we should. So you give us this information on what health experts say we should do, and you're only picking two of those three. All those things that you broke, 50% of the ones you broke are still things that the health experts say you should do, and you broke them.
You know what? That is true because
so you're a hypocrite.
No, fuck it, God, Jesus Christ! I'm so baffled. I'm actually baffled.
Okay, I'll shut up. Go.
Holy shit! Look, I have a different standard. I never, for instance, I didn't even mention the fact of fucking putting on the hygiene the thing that COVID killing like Germ-X or whatever. I didn't even mention that with his business. I didn't mention any of those other things when it came to his business. The things I mentioned were the main things that I think should be the crux of policy. Do I believe that Germ-X should have been provided at the protest? Probably would have made it safer. That's true. I think that would have been cool if that was provided at the protest. I think maybe going to future protests, it'd be cooler things to put there. But again, none of this is at all saying that I am hypocritical. People can pick and choose which recommendations they take and which recommendations they don't take. And then you can have an argument with me about why me picking and choosing this one was ridiculous or why me picking and choosing that one was ridiculous. For example, this happens all the time with government. Trump has done this, Biden's done this, Obama's done it, Ronald Reagan's done it. Literally every president in U.S. history. Experts walk up to them, they make recommendations to the government, and then the president's like, this one seems feasible, this one doesn't seem feasible, I disagree with this one, I agree with this one. This is how policy is made. And me agreeing with some of these on these lists to be enforced, while I think other ones should be things that are broadly placed out, if possible, in a protest setting. You can't have like a Germ-X counter if it's a fucking march eventually. That's just not really functional. Maybe the person with a wheelbarrow, not a wheelbarrow, but with the pulley, what's it called, a wagon? He was like pulling a wagon. Maybe he could have had Germ-X in there. He had water bottles that were at some point, but maybe you could have had Germ-X. Maybe that would have been better for the future. But me picking and choosing literally isn't hypocrisy. That's me picking and choosing. You could think it's weird that I picked this one and not that one, but that's not hypocrisy.
Do you
because
think
you
you're more
you agree with as well?
Real quick, do you think that you're more moral?
Let me ask you. I just want to ask a clarifying question.
Did I
6 feet apart.
I didn't.
You were 6 feet apart from everybody the entire time.
The entire time. Now, it is impossible for any event ever be held.
Exactly.
That's possible. Meaning we should shut down all events, and the military should be shut down so there's no training drills or anything like that.
There's a difference between a protest and the military.
That's ridiculous. That's not a standard that should be held. It should be generally you stay 6 feet apart from people. If your thing is I can't go do anything unless I stay 6 feet apart if I want to have any restrictions whatsoever, that's a ridiculous position to hold or think that I have
But that's the exact position that we see so many of these leaders adapting. They're saying you can't go to work.
Well, I'm not those leaders.
I understand, but now can you understand why someone would not trust any of the orders they're decreeing when they're saying things that are that ridiculous that you can't operate your business? Can you understand how this person would distrust experts that are telling him, oh, you have to wear a mask and you can't operate your business because social distancing is so important. But this group, it's okay for them to go out and social distance.
Conversation we're having.
Okay,
sure,
let me
probably a genius.
Let me ask you, do you think that you engaged in that you're more moral than the gym owner when it comes to
this or like
yes.
Generally?
So you don't view it as a
wait. I just said more moral or generally, and then you just said yes.
Oh no! I didn't hear you say that. Do you think when it comes to this, your standards on which COVID policies to abide by?
I mean, more moral. Morality is. Oh my God, that's. Okay,
because the problem is most of the time when we talk about hypocrisy, we talk about it in the context of people that feel that they have a moral high ground than someone else for engaged in similar behavior.
I would say that my standards I think make the most sense for a healthy economy, a healthy democracy, and a healthy people. So I would assume in that instance, yes, but I hate calling myself more moral than somebody else.
So, for example, if we take a look at of a standard definition of hypocrisy, the practice of engaging in the same behavior or activity for which one criticizes another, or the practice of claiming to have moral standards or beliefs for which one's own behavior does not conform. That's the only reason I was asking if you thought that there was a sense of morality that you were operating under that he didn't. You're criticizing him I understand what your point you're making.
So I'm hypocritical because I believe I'm superior, but I do the same thing anyway.
That would be a definition of hypocrisy.
Yeah,
yes.
But I'm not doing the same thing.
But
because I'm wearing the mask, I'm doing that because my standards are different. See, the thing is, you'd have me if the standards I was applying to him, when it comes to everything that I applied to myself, were different. You'd have me if I did that, but I don't. I apply the same standards. I am picking and choosing because this is what governments, this is what people, this is what we all do. If we had to follow everything that the expert said, and me to have to follow anything the expert said, I have to take everything the experts said, meaning we had to enforce everything the expert said. There's a difference between believing and enforcing what an expert has to say, right? Because an expert would all admit that, if everybody just stayed home and never went outside their house, that'd be the safest way to stop COVID spread. Every expert would agree with this on COVID. Everyone. But everyone also acknowledges that that's stupid and you can't do that. Hypocritical. It would be hypocritical if I said, I don't have to wear a mask because I'm a clean coastal. Have you seen this hair? I am fire. I don't catch COVID. I was raised different. But he's like a flyover state person. He needs to clean everything.
I would agree with you, except and I actually mean this. If your standard was that you just think he's dumber than you, I don't think that alone makes you a hypocrite. Right?
Well, no, I don't know if he's dumber than me.
Well, no. I don't mean that, and I'm not saying that criticizing. If you think that his decision is poor and damaging public health more than you, right? Is that a fair way to put it? That I would say that doesn't make you a hypocrite. What I do think makes you a hypocrite, and I understand you do this painstakingly, but that you do think that there should be some consequence for his action.
I don't believe there's a consequence for my action, even though it could have some impact on public health. Right?
But the difference is it's different than just the drug example you're given, and here's why. Because you're admitting that you're not an expert and that you're intentionally going against the advice of the experts. That's what makes it different.
Government, yes, we should. Yes, but this happens all the time. People will say, I believe in the experts, and in these instances, I'm going to take their advice, and I acknowledge that these are true, but these are not feasible in the current situation that we're in. Right? For example, a lot of experts would say that the best way to stop climate change would be if all of these productions with oil and cars and everything was just to stop right now. But a government official would say, no, you can't do that. So we have to an extent, figure out how we're going to get to this place where we're actually going to have a safe and livable world in the future. And if one said, and now you could say, curious that you, someone who wants to battle climate change, also has a car that puts out carbon emissions. That's very curious, Mr. Senator. That's not hypocrisy if they also said, I believe currently that carbon emission cars shouldn't be banned, but I believe, that this thing over here, cars that, I don't know, literally function on carbon emission and produce double the carbon emissions should be banned. That's not hypocrisy. He has a different standard for how we should approach this issue.
That analogy doesn't really apply, though, because we're not talking about hypothetical actions that are going to be taken that somehow we know about, and we're talking about should this be banned or should this be allowed and things like that. We're talking specifically about a situation where there are two co-equally important orders that are being issued, and you're saying because you find the one burdensome, you should be allowed to violate that order, but a person that finds the other one burdensome should be punished by the government.
Yes, 100%. And the reason why is because I believe a society could not function properly if that was put in, and the other one, I believe it can, right? If we have two orders, and let's say one reduces world hunger by 50%, and the other one reduces world hunger by 50%, right? Let's and I mean, I know hypotheticals are weird, but let's just say that's the case, right? Mm-hmm. And I believe one could be put into place effectively and well, and it's not as much of a burden as the other, but the other one is a bigger burden to stop. Then if I said we should enforce this one, but not this one, you can't say to me, well, you're a hypocrite on the ending of world hunger, because I believe that this one's easier and it's probably going to be easier for our economy and our nation to adapt to that one.
But it's not easier, Dylan. What the CDC is telling, hold on. What the CDC is telling you to do is don't do these things until all of this is gone. What you're saying is let's mandate masks.
I feel such a burden, I can barely cope.
Okay, now put yourself in a business owner's position and forcing people to wear a mask when a lot of people don't want. Because I can tell you the one thing, it is anecdotal, sure, but I work at a restaurant, and I guarantee you, and I live in California too, and I work at a restaurant, and lot of people. South part. Can I say that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, the South part, and a lot of people that I talk to hate the mask mandates.
Okay.
And that would put a huge and obviously it's not. It's because I'm not going to say that actually.
What were you about to say?
I was about to say where I worked, but no.
Don't say that. Yeah, we'll say Applebee's, okay? Okay. So.
Oh wait, no one's streaming. Yeah.
No. Someone.
No, I am.
No,
yeah.
Rob streaming, and Dan.
Oh, okay, cool.
But
Rob, can I use your stream afterwards?
Yeah, you could anytime.
Okay.
You could. But yeah, but no, I understand. Like, go ahead, please respond. He just talked. Go ahead and respond.
Fuck. Let me think about what you just said. Could you say the main point again?
Well, what you're saying is that so I feel like you're trying to avoid talking about protests and comparing them to things that are feasible. When the CDC is saying let's just hold off on these, the CDC is saying let's hold off on these until
I got it. Okay. Cool. So the thing is, you're right that making anybody have to do anything could be a burden. There could be a situation where someone's like, "Hello, sir. You can't wear shoes. You can't have that shirt on that says that extremely offensive phrase on it in my store." And they say, "Well, screw you. I'm not going to come here anymore," and then walk out. Right? There could be situations.
Apples and oranges.
Well, let me finish. Anytime you put a restriction in place for what people have to do while participating in any business, that's going to be the case. But I think the burden of having people wear this and shutting down all public protests when it has an impact on the stability and strength of democracy in our nation, I think is much. I believe, and it's because I value the public right to protest much more. Well, that's not true. I don't know, but I value it extremely highly. That I believe that is integral, and we should have restrictions in place.
Okay.
But we can't have a scenario where we shut that down because
What's
I believe
Rob?
it's un-American.
Okay, Rob. Let me just ask him one quick question. Sorry, one quick question. Do you think
2 hours now? So this at some point
sure.
we gotta
Yeah. So which one do you think is better to do? Hold off on protests for 6 months, or require every restaurant to mandate masks? Which one do you think is better for the economy?
Better for the economy or the nation? That's
whichever.
I would say probably
repeat what I asked, please. I just want you to.
What's better? 6 months, or I would assume the mask mandate's also for 6 months, not indefinite forever, right? I would assume.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, because that would be unfair. So 6 months, every restaurant has to wear masks, or or shutting down all protests for 6 months. I would say the protests, definitely during election season.
It was after the election.
But after there seems to be a rejection of the Democratic.
Wait. Holding off on protests, you think that's better to do?
No. I think the mask mandate's better to do.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and look, there's other things that I think that we're not fully talking about when it talks about the burden of masks. Like, for example, you've talked about how you were a boxer, right? And you went to the gym.
Yeah.
You've wore a mask while you were at the gym?
Yeah, I wore a mask.
Now
running, I wore a mask.
You would say that you're a relatively healthy person, right? Did the mask impede your breathing while you were working out?
Did it impede my breathing? I actually have to think about that. I know people would wear certain types of masks to restrain their breathing, but they were very specially designed to do that. But I could say that putting a piece of cloth is going to make it a little bit more difficult to take in air.
Okay, so it's certainly people that maybe weren't in as physically fit shape as you, or that had some sort of mild breathing conditions but still like to work out, would be extremely inconvenienced and burdened by wearing a mask while they work out.
I don't know. I honestly I've seen people who have
I like how you still have it on, by the way.
Yeah,
you're just
I'm dealing with this burden. Okay, it's difficult, it's hard, but I'm gonna struggle through it because I care about this country.
Right there,
yeah,
hard cope.
But the thing is, to be honest, I saw people with one lung wearing masks in the boxing gym. Right. And now to be fair, boxers are a different breed of people where they're willing to get punched in the face for fun.
Real quick, can I interject? Was this during COVID? Yeah. Just asking. The gym you saw people wearing masks?
Yeah, this was before COVID, way before COVID.
Oh, it was before COVID. So it wasn't during...
Yeah, we wore masks just because boxers I wore masks during the winter because it was cold and I had to run during the winter and it was cold. But some people would wear specially designed masks that were these plastic things. I forget exactly what they were, and they'd wear
to increase endurance
sweatsuits. Yeah, full body sweatsuits, and the idea was that they're draining their body of all the water weight, and I think the mask was part of that, but it was also part of, because how it was designed, they like made it so you could restrain breathing, so they're powering their lungs so they can last for longer in the ring.
But was it cold outside, or
was it cold? No, it wasn't cold outside. The whole point of it was for them to lose as much weight as possible. But these masks are not the same as those masks, and I've seen people who have half a lung we use these. I've seen people who are in their like 60s and 70s use these while at the gym. Like they like, and when I'm talking like these, I'm not talking like those high tech things, even though in one instance it was somebody with half a lung did use the high tech thing. But I've seen people of all ages, all shapes, and all abilities use these masks before because.
Okay, Dylan, let me. This? Do you think the World Health Organization's an organization that we should listen to regarding COVID?
WHO.
Yeah.
Generally, I guess, yeah.
Okay. Let me now real quick, because I think this is very important. Let me present. Can you go to? I don't know how to show you this. Can I screen share?
You just send it to me.
It's just a Google page. When I click on the link, it's weird. But anyways, I typed in Google, can wearing a mask while working out be dangerous? The very first link, it says COVID-19 alert, common question. Is it safe to wear a mask while working out for protection against COVID? This is from the World Health Organization. People should not wear masks when exercising, as masks may reduce the ability to breathe comfortably. Sweat can make the mask become wet more quickly, which makes it more difficult to breathe and promotes the growth of microorganisms.
That I generally did not know.
So there seems to be, like, you could start to see then, while there's conflicting evidence, particularly when it comes to masks in the context of working out, you could start to see how it would seem hypocritical for you to say for him to avoid that.
The difference is here, right? Even if I acknowledge this, we also acknowledge, due to the environment of what a gym is, there is no time when I have ever boxed or fought or did anything that I didn't leave the ring or whatever, or doing any type of working out where I didn't leave and I wasn't like, which that type of breathing is obviously going to be more dangerous than a normal environment when it comes to COVID spread.
Right. So all the more reason to not call someone a dumbass and say that because now think of this. This is literally a health expert on COVID saying not to wear the mask.
No, well, it depends on your health, because I wore masks during like boxing my whole time and I'm still alive. I mean, I hate to do the whole like I did the risky thing and I'm still alive, but I've seen like I doubt that it's just that. I think it has to do with microorganisms specifically. I think they're talking about. But the difference I would say is, at the end of the day, if I'm like this. Right? You can feel that. But if I have this on, it's not going to be the same amount. And that's the one thing I'm concerned about here.
But listen, this is literally from the World Health Organization in response to COVID, saying that you shouldn't vigorously exercise while wearing a mask, because it could not only spread COVID and microorganisms, but it could also cause difficulty breathing.
Well, okay.
So when you talk about, so if you're not, so just real quick. Just real quick, if you don't have a problem, you're saying, I don't have a problem with the gym staying open. I just have a problem with them not mandating people wear masks. And they're actually following the World Health Organization guidelines that says we don't want people strenuously exercising while wearing masks. What exactly are they doing that's bad again?
Sweat. Give me a moment here.
Sure.
People should not wear masks when they exercise. Has mask reduced ability to breathe comfortably. That is something, I mean, that's always in exercising. The first part doesn't really concern me that much. Second part, sweat can make the mask become wet more quickly, which makes it difficult to breathe and promotes the growth of microorganisms. So are they saying the microorganisms could help spread COVID, or are they just saying that generally with diseases?
I don't know. I know the World Health Organization is saying as clear as possible, don't wear a mask while exercising. And the fact that you were healthy enough to overcome that, their recommendations aren't necessarily just for healthy people. And you full well know that, particularly when it comes to COVID, because 99.975% of people.
Give me a second here.
Sure.
If this is saying that in a closed environment, and they're not talking about outside in public, but they're saying in a gym that it is more safe for people to not wear a mask in a gym than to wear a mask, which I really think this has some other, I think it maybe have to do with the outside, or generally outside of an enclosed environment, which has to do with other recommendations WHO has said about not being in large groups while in a closed environment, different things like that. But if this is legitimately them saying in a closed gym or anything like that, don't wear a mask, then you're right. But it still doesn't make me hypocritical.
Okay, there's a video. If you click on the link and you go down, like it's only 30 seconds. So I don't know how good it'll be.
That's drinking alcohol.
I mean, it doesn't say. I think it would be a disingenuous reading of that to think that they're saying, "Oh, but we're only talking about in an outdoor setting." I think that they would have specifically said, "Oh, but if you're indoors and exercising," which clearly they would know a lot of people exercise indoors, then you should go ahead and wear a mask. I mean, so, and it is hypocritical.
Wait a second. What the fuck? I just looked at one other source. Should you exercise in a mask? You should wear a mask while exercising when you're out in public and can't maintain a distance of at least 6 feet away from others. This is an important part of protecting yourself and others from coronavirus. When running, it may be particularly difficult to be socially distanced from others. It might be particularly difficult to be socially distanced from others. You're going to be dodging the people with your crowds. You should wear a running mask. However, if you're in a place where there has fewer people, such as a quiet neighborhood or a local park, that this is from the University of Maryland's medical system. So again, this is what's making me okay, so this is exactly what I was talking about. So this is why I would say it could be possibly different within a closed environment than from an open environment. If you're in an open environment where there's not a lot of people, then obviously the growth of microorganisms could be a bigger risk than the actual spread of COVID through heavy breathing. But if you're in a closed environment, as University of Maryland, I can post this if you want. University of Maryland.
Right. But look, here's
this is getting much further.
Well, right. Yeah, but this is the point, right? Like the idea that you just say it's based on what I feel about scientific consensus. It's okay for me to violate social distancing orders because I feel that it makes sense. But when I show you that even the World Health Organization itself recommends people not wear masks while exercising.
Then I read a little bit more and I get more into the details, and it seems that it has to do with specific situations. If you look at that clip that they posted, that's, what is it, 3 sentences? No, 2 sentences. That's 2 sentences. And so then I find something that has a little bit more sentences, and I doubt the University of Maryland's medical system, which is a respected institute. I mean, it's literally I could go there if I wanted. Says that, like, actually, yes, in this instance, don't wear a mask. But actually, if you're in a closed environment where you can't be 6 feet apart, which in a gym and you're trading weights and such, going off different equipment, that would be an environment where many instances you can't be 6 feet apart. Then it would seem that would be an instance where you should probably wear a mask. So it seems that it's just a more detailed analysis than 2 sentences.
What it seems like is that there are credible health experts suggesting that there are significant problems with wearing a mask while exercising. And so to claim once more that this guy's a dumbass, and again, he's not saying he doesn't wear a mask while exercising. He's saying, I'm not forcing people to wear a mask. Now, people could...
It's no longer about me being a hypocrite, is it?
It is indeed about being a hypocrite, because the reason that this comes...
Why are you arguing this?
Because you assumed that you knew what the facts were. It was okay because you knew enough. Then
you countered with it, and it seems that a more detailed reading means that I was still right.
No. Listen, let me make this as clear as possible. You assumed that you understood that it was incredibly stupid and there was no scientific backing for people suggesting that they shouldn't wear masks while they're exercising, and therefore this guy was a dumbass for violating social distance or for violating scientific consensus. Mm-hmm. But it was all right for you to violate scientific consensus. Now it turns out that there are credible experts. There are credible experts, such as the World Health Organization, saying there are significant problems with many people with wearing a mask while exercising. Therefore, as a business owner, you could come to the quite reasonable solution that, or the quite reasonable theory that I'm not going to force people to wear masks because there's competing evidence as to whether or not it's good.
It's about to be 2.5 hours, but
okay.
So I do want to wrap this up at some point because it's about to be 3 a.m. where I live. So number one, the first sentence doesn't have anything to do with COVID. It has to do with restrictions on breathing, right?
Right, but that's irrelevant to COVID.
Which I'll say, as somebody who boxed, ran, and did everything with restrictions on breathing, I would say that if this makes it more difficult for you to work out, then the best thing you should be doing is probably working out from home in the first place, right? The second part is when
that hardly benefits the guy that owns the gym.
Yeah, but it would benefit public health.
Right, but that's the point. His ability to make a living is important, right? You're saying you don't have a problem with that.
It is important.
Okay.
No, I do want him to make money. I do want his business to prosper, but I also want to do it in the most reasonably responsible way possible, the most reasonably safe way possible that the society still functions. Now, let me get on the actual growth part, the growth of microorganisms. This is 2 sentences, right? 2 sentences from the World Health Organization. It doesn't go into specifics. And then when we go into a more detailed analysis from other respected medical institutions that isn't literally 2 sentences, it seems that it's a little bit more complicated than that. And there are instances where you don't wear a mask when you're running in a quiet neighborhood and when you do wear a mask. So it seems that a more detailed analysis than 2 sentences, one of which only has to do with actual COVID. So 1 sentence about COVID, more detailed, actually has to talk about which setting. In the setting that he is in would be one where people should wear masks.
That's not true.
So the University of Maryland's wrong here? Or?
So the World Health Organization's wrong?
But they didn't say that.
Yes, they did. They said you
talk in the World Health Organization with their handling of COVID, if I'm being honest.
Okay, well, if that's the instance, right? If that's the case, if I said one instance and I said shooting people is wrong, right? And you'd be like, well, that makes sense, murder. But then someone was like, shooting people is wrong. But, there should be some instances of someone's assaulting you in self-defense, da-da-da-da-da. Does that mean the person who originally said shooting people is wrong is incorrect? Or is it that it's a more detailed analysis of the situation than 1 sentence?
The point is this. You admitted that the World Health Organization is an organization that we should listen to their advice when it comes to fighting COVID. The question says, common question, is it safe to wear a mask while working out for protection against COVID-19?
Let's do this. Can I do something?
Sure.
How about I email the World Health Organization and send them this thing from Maryland and other things and be like, hey, I'm confused. I'm someone who's a health, fitness, whatever guru. Is it, if I am in a gym, should I wear a mask? And we can get this cleared up.
Okay.
And if they say in a gym, you shouldn't wear a mask in a gym, I'll be like, you know what, Rob? You got this one? High five.
Okay. But my point is, even regardless of that, but I do think it's a good idea that you ask, that it seems hypocritical to assume someone who could have literally looked up and saw, who would you say is the most premier organizations that someone would look up if they're a layman? World Health Organization, CDC. If you're a gym owner and you are looking, hey, should I allow people to wear masks, but should I force people to wear masks? And you type it in, and the first article that comes...
I would hope that somebody who cares about the business reads more than 1 sentence.
I'm sure they do, and I'm sure there are scientists that talk about the potential dangers in general of wearing masks more than just those 2 organizations. I'm sure there are many that talk about... And again, we're talking about strenuous activity, people going to this gym to lift weights and things like that. So they could have came to the conclusion, look, there's clearly credible scientists on both sides of this, so we're not going to force people...
I got another article that's literally saying the exact thing I'm saying. When you're exercising around other people, especially indoors, where air circulation is less likely to dissipate the virus, wearing a mask can reduce the risk of infecting someone nearby. If you don't have symptoms, you may be unwitting carrier of the disease. This is exactly what I was thinking. So this, I'm going to actually email the World Health Organization, because I think this should be something that's clarified on the website if they're not currently clarifying it. And I can tell you, World Health Organization has never been good with presenting their ideas with, what's the word? Well, for example, their situation with Taiwan. But I will say specifically when it comes to this, I think they need to clarify more than 1 sentence, because it seems that every other source that I'm looking at currently is all saying wear a mask if you're inside and exercising. Every single other source I'm looking at right now, it seems to be the case.
Well, I'm just telling you, it's clear that people could have... it's clear that people could have looked at the World Health Organization and thought that it was dangerous for people to wear masks while working out, and just said, I'm not going to force people to do something that could be dangerous. Okay, and for it's not as if, your argument for why you wouldn't be a hypocrite would make sense if it was literally, there's no evidence out there suggesting that masks could be burdensome or dangerous. But clearly there is. So they've chosen which data to follow, just like you have.
In certain environments, it could be dangerous. I mean, obviously, like if I'm swimming, a mask could be dangerous because it's going to hurt, because once I get out, it's covered in water. I could actually suffocate, right? But in other instances, if I'm just walking down the street, the mask is obviously not dangerous to me. It depends on the environment on whether it's dangerous. In an open environment where there's not a lot of people around, the growth of microorganisms through the sweat could be more dangerous, but that right there is a danger that has always existed with working out. The growth of microorganisms in the clothes that you get sweaty on. I constantly, like, sometimes I'd come out, I take my clothes off, I throw it in like the corner because, you know, I take a shower and I just pass out because I worked out all day. Then I wake up, I was like, oh, what's that smell? And it's my clothes because I forgot to throw it in the washer before. And that happened at least once a month. I forget to do that. And that is the growth of microorganisms. This is something that's existed with working out and being healthy for a long time. But it doesn't seem to be, from any of the other sources I'm looking at, that I don't think the World Health Organization, even if they messed up here, is saying here that you shouldn't wear a mask while exercising indoors.
Well, I mean, that's literally what they're saying. You shouldn't wear a mask while exercising.
No, they say while exercising, but then you look at everything else that says indoors, wear a mask. And I'm sure we can just email them and we can settle.
Okay, we'll see what they say. I'm just saying real quick. The point is, you have picked and chose which scientific consensus you were willing to follow, and then you criticized other people for doing the same. And it's clear,
even broke some of the ones you agree with.
And it's clear that there is at least one organization out there that's considered one of the two premier organizations on where to go to get information to protect yourself, that is saying, in general, it's dangerous to do strenuous activity or strenuous exercising wearing a mask. It could cause problems. So I could totally see
existed with wearing masks.
That's true, which would be all the more reason for a gym owner to say, I'm not going to force people to do something that I know could have serious negative health side effects.
If somebody has breathing problems and they're going to the gym and then the mask thing comes in, the thing that should happen is a person works out from home now.
But that's that's different than saying the gym owner is somehow a dumbass.
That's more of a reason for him to have actually this mask mandate in place in this gym, because if somebody has breathing problems to the point where they can't go to the gym and wear a mask, then they are one of the most at-risk groups for COVID and should be staying home, period.
It's a nonsense point, because the idea is that even if it's not the gym owner's responsibility to now have a checklist to say, I need your incomplete health history. If you can't work out with a mask, then you shouldn't be allowed to be here. The gym owner say, what would happen if the gym owner says everyone has to wear a mask, and then that person that did have poor health came in, starts bench pressing, and all of a sudden starts having a breathing attack because that mask is impeding their ability to breathe and they're seriously hurt? Then what happens? It would just be, well, tough shit. That's what's that?
If somebody with breathing, okay, sorry, let me start over. Somebody with breathing problems is working out there, puts on a mask, and then that causes a crisis. That person shouldn't be there in the first place.
But what's that have to do with the gym owner being a dumbass? No, all the gym owner knows is that
you brought it up.
Right. No, you're the one who brought the whole conversations, because you said that it was okay for you to dismiss some of these guidelines.
This right here, wearing it in a gym, from the vast majority of data that's been put out there, and I did say the general consensus, even after we email them, we can clarify that completely, because I genuinely think it's just a miscommunication issue. Now, this seems to be something that could help people generally, and I also, me personally, you disagree, I don't think it is a large enough burden for the business owner to be able to say, nah, bash that up and throw it away. And that's why I thought it was a dumb move to take. I think it's something that, even if it wasn't mandated by law, he should have his customers put on. But I have a different standard for what level of risk I'm willing to take within a society. And everybody has this. This is a question of debate that's been going on for decades. Risk versus liberty, dangers versus liberty. The idea of what amount of danger and what amount of freedom are we willing to deal with in the society. And I think this amount I'm willing to allow in society, but the restriction of protests through banning them from happening publicly, I'm not willing to deal with.
Okay, well, I think the fact that, as I said, I think the fact that there's credible evidence suggesting that it could be dangerous to force people to wear masks is problematic. And I think I don't care. It's clear. It's a clear sentence from one of the premier organizations in the world.
Clarify.
Okay, and if they say yes, we'll see what you say. Will you write to that gym owner and apologize?
Will I write to that gym owner and apologize if the World Health Organization tells me that it is dangerous, that it is more dangerous?
No, not more dangerous. That it's dangerous to wear a mask
Wait, but it would be the levels of danger. I mean, anybody wearing a mask and working out could be dangerous due to.
No. But here's the difference, because what the World Health Organization, what they're going to tell you is this.
This has always been the
no. What they're going to tell you is
no. You need to listen to me.
Let's. What they're going to tell you is, those gyms shouldn't be open. They should follow lockdown orders. That's what they'll tell you. That's not the question. The question is, in general, should people be wearing masks when they're working out? Or is it dangerous? Period.
Say that again. Somebody said me.
In general, should people be wearing masks while they're working out?
In general, most of the time, it depends on where you live. If you live in the city and you're working out in a gym, then yes. If you live in the countryside and you're just running in an area with not a lot of people, then no. Like in general, COVID restrictions should be different state by state. It depends on the conditions of the state.
The point is, what's likely to happen is they're going to say, our orders are that you should social distance as much as possible and not be working out with other people.
Okay, and I'm going to ask them specifically about if I am in a gym and no matter, fuck COVID restrictions on social distancing, if I'm in a gym working out, should I wear a mask if I'm close to other people in a gym? And it built a physical gym, not outside.
While working out.
While working out. That's what I'm going to ask them.
All right, ask them. But nonetheless, the conversation's over. I still think that there is an amount of hypocrisy, specifically with the idea that they should be punished for violating orders that they... It's just that you say, I know that these orders are more important. I understand the science better than them. And I don't think that's the case. So that's why I think it's hypocritical. But it is getting late, so I understand ending the conversation.
Well, I will just say I completely disagree. I don't think I was hypocritical whatsoever. And I will continue to, if another opportunity shows itself, I'll go to another protest.
Well, that's fine, and I hope that people continue to keep their businesses and livelihood open because the reaction to COVID has been political by so many people, and it's intentionally designed to...
Of course, it's political.
Yes, of course. That's why they put nursing home patients into... or they put COVID patients into nursing homes. That's why they've embraced allowing certain people to violate the orders and not others. That's why Nancy Pelosi said that she wouldn't do a small relief bill for people to send personal checks to them. And she wanted a big one that would do a bunch of other stuff. But then as soon as Joe Biden won the election...
Well, I'm not prepared to have a conversation about
Nancy Pelosi's
I know. Policies.
Well, you shouldn't have said, of course, it's political then. I was just saying that.
I say, of course, the response is political, and then you bring it to Nancy Pelosi. This. I said, of course, it's political, but apparently it's political.
Okay. Fair enough.
Crisis is going to be political. Okay.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Well, hey, have a good evening.
You have a good evening.
All right.
Wait.
Let's see if I can leave you. Yeah, it is getting late. I'm not going to be up much longer. I will say that it's less hypocritical than I originally thought. In that he's not for the lockdown, which is good. So I think that that's a more reasonable stance than most of the people I see. So he says he would be against the lockdown policy. We shall see. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know about the validity of masks in a gym setting. He doesn't know at all. I'll admit I don't either. That's why I say people should make their own decisions to do what they want. You could mince words any way you want. You could say, so if you say smoking a joint shouldn't be punished, but someone murdering someone, then you're a hypocrite. No, it's a completely different argument. The argument is that you're implying that someone is stupid for violating the government recommendations on COVID, but then you're doing the same thing. And there's a lot of what I think is just kind of leaning towards disingenuous argumentation on his point. Like the idea that Black Lives Matter, they're not violating social distance. They're 6 feet apart. Even if that's what Dylan did, he knew the majority of people there would not be doing that and did not do that. So I believe that is hypocritical. Now, if he just said, I don't think this statement is hypocritical. If you say, I choose to violate social distance orders, but I think that people that violate mask orders are dumb. I don't think that's hypocritical, just that statement. For example, I think that people that disagree with me are stupid on a lot of things. That doesn't mean I'm a hypocrite. I'm only a hypocrite if I say, therefore, there should be some governmental consequence for them. I don't think there should be a consequence for me from the government for violating their orders, but I do think there should be a consequence for those people for violating orders. That's what makes the hypocrite. So that's why I was saying. Now, I will admit that he was reticent, but he said, yes, I do. Ultimately, he said that he feels there should be a penalty imposed to them by the government. That makes him a hypocrite. What's up, Danabo? I saw you were in there. Yeah, me and the missus are doing well. Now, I think that I treated Dylan with much more respect than I treated Mr. Geck, but Dylan didn't say that he thought that I deserved COVID or anything like that, or blame me for getting COVID. So it's a totally different situation. I'll go ahead. Danabo, can you come on my channel to talk, man? I don't want to go back on Dylan's channel. I think he's ready for bed. But let me open my chat and I can bring you back on. I don't have all night though. Unfortunately, I do have to get to bed. But yeah, Danabo, are you on my channel or do you need an invite? But yeah, come on in. Also, the reason I didn't show video is I didn't get a chance to ask Dylan. He did say that I could stream it, but I didn't. So I didn't put because some people weren't dressed maybe as they always would be. So, but yeah, Danabo, I sent you a link to my Discord, which you can feel free to come on. What did Robbie or did the exact thing? What did I do? You coming on, Danbo? Am I even pronouncing that right? Oh, there you are, man. You're muted, though. There you are. Can you hear me? Oh, you must be getting a mic, too.
There we go.
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, what's up, man? Nice to hear from you.
Yeah, it's Danabo, or Danabo, whichever. So I wanted to jump in there in the middle of all of it, but I didn't get the chance. For a start, my chat absolutely does not believe that you wore a mask at all times.
Okay, so let me clarify. I do not wear a mask when I'm in my own home. If I went to a gathering in my parents' house or something like that, I didn't wear a mask. I literally wore a mask every single time that I would go to Walmart, that I would go up through a drive-through at a restaurant. I wore a mask the entire time that I worked. That is absolutely true. I will say this. It was a weird thing. I would always I kept masks in my car because I always forgot to have a mask on me in person. But yeah, they were always in my car. So every time I walked to my car from my house, I didn't have a mask on. But anytime I got out of the car to go into a place of business, yes, I wore a mask every time.
But there are times when you got to the business and thought, oh crap, I'm not wearing my mask, and you have to go back, right?
Never happened. In fact, around here, there were most of the businesses around here. Well, I can't say most. Many of the businesses around here would tell you have to wear a mask to be in. And I was never told that. In fact, I argued vehemently against people that went into businesses that weren't wearing masks, that they knew were going to tell them to wear a mask, because I feel like that you're only then insulting someone who's making a small amount of money. So yeah, I can't say 100% certain, but I literally tried to be conscious every time I got out of the car to make sure I had a mask on if I was entering a place of business. And I can't think of an instance where that wasn't the case.
Okay.
Once they had, obviously that's not the case like in February and early March before they were talking about masks. But once Pennsylvania mandated that people wear masks, yes, that's certainly the case. In fact, what's that?
Go ahead. Yeah, a couple of things I disagree with was the argument about the efficiency of masks. I don't think there was ever an argument. There was the case where they were telling you not to buy the mask because the medical staff needed them. I think the narrative that they weren't efficient is a political one to stop people from buying up medical masks.
They lied to us. They said that masks weren't effective. We even saw people like...
They obviously were, otherwise doctors wouldn't have been wearing them for the past 50 years or whatever, would they? So they were definitely effective.
Let me clarify. Let me clarify on this. One, there are significant questions. There are studies that say that masks aren't helping and that they actually could spread other diseases or can spread the disease because they're not effective and people touch their face and stuff more when they're wearing a mask, which actually is a bigger spread of COVID than not wearing the mask. Yeah, I don't know.
People don't wear them correctly and they start touching the face or they've got them on their chin and then keep pulling them up and down. And yeah, if you're not wearing it correctly, you're going to...
There was a peer-reviewed study out of Europe just recently that said that masks are not effective and are in fact dangerous. I don't know if someone in my chat could link it. I'm telling you, though, I said from the get-go in March that when the experts said that masks don't work, I said that was stupid and that was something so dumb that only the experts would say because it was so young and early in what we knew about the virus to specifically tell people that masks won't work, I said was stupid.
And it's stupid just because we know how viruses work previously and we know why doctors and nurses wear masks in the first place to stop them catching diseases from the patients. So masks do work in that case. But yeah, that's even here or there. The bit I agree with you is my good friends Dylan Burns and Mr. Geek are being a bit hypocritical. If there are standards in place, everybody should follow those standards. That includes the protesters and the gym owners. There isn't one rule for some or a different rule for another. And it doesn't change on whether you kill more or less people. So, yeah, they're hypocritical in that case.
Yeah, I totally agree. If I could just get real quick back to the mask, just because people were asking for this. Chris, I think, let me see if he posts. I want to make this as clear as possible to your audience. I'm not saying that I don't think masks work. I don't know. My stance, what I've tried to be very careful on my channel of doing is not giving any medical advice because I don't know. So all I could say is here's what I'm personally doing. And I'll say I understand why people question this. But for example, here's a study. I don't know if your audience could see my channel, but I have the video up. This is from... It says it's from CMAJ. I don't know exactly what that stands for, but surgical mask is a bad fit for risk reduction. Is one of these studies. There are tons of studies that say that the mask wasn't good, that they're harmful in other ways. I don't know though. I'm just saying that data's out there. Now
they're harmful in the ways we just discussed. People don't wear them correctly, or they've got them on their chin and then they're pulling them up and down, or they don't put them over the full face. They're harmful, so you've got to wear them correctly, just like any other safety device you've got to wear correctly. You can't wear a seatbelt wrong and claim it was the seatbelt's fault that it didn't save your life. So yeah, they're effective if you wear them correctly and use them correctly and hand sanitize before you touch in your face. But still, if that's the guideline for the gym people to wear masks, then it's the guideline for the protesters to wear masks.
That's the big issue that I have as well. And I just think it's hypocritical. I understand what Dylan's trying to say. I get it. And Dylan's less hypocritical than Mr. Geck, who's saying that this gym owner should be in jail. That's certainly a more degree of hypocrisy. I agree in spirit with Dylan on that. But I think that anytime someone says that I should be allowed to violate orders, but others shouldn't. And I think that one of the things that Dylan's missing is he's not looking at it in the greater context of why someone like this owner would be so furious to not even want to consider forcing people to wear masks. And that's because he sees the one-sided way and hypocritical way that his governor, why can't I think of his Murphy, has applied these laws. And that's what's so devastating and why, I said that I think that it's political. The reaction to this is political. It's not about keeping people safe from COVID. It's about forcing people's political will on other people. And that's what I think Dylan's losing. Why I thought it was important to call out what I saw as his hypocrisy. But
Yeah, another part of Dylan being a hypocrite is if he's allowed to protest, then the gym owner should be allowed to protest in his gym against the restrictions. So it's the same right to protest.
That's exactly right. And I should. And so let me just say, I know this isn't responding directly to you, but if you have people listening, I should say this. Look, I've had a difficult week and a half. My wife's 9 months pregnant. We both got COVID. Both of us, it's not been fun. I'll just say it that way. So I was a little hot when Mr. Geck basically blamed myself for getting COVID. That kind of, I think that's ridiculously out of bounds. And it's something that really agitates me because I'm someone who tries my best, even with people that I think are really bad for this country. I always sincerely wish them a good life. I don't want them to get sick. I don't want them to lose their livelihood and things like that. So when someone responds to me in that way, it really infuriates me. So maybe that I was a tad overzealous in the way that I yelled.
You took it a bit personal. You should have taken it personal. I've got a 3-year-old myself. Rob, so yeah, I took it a bit more seriously than other people did because I've got a 3-year-old. And if you've got a child on the way, then you take it more seriously. And you take somebody blaming you for catching the disease when you followed the restrictions yourself seriously. Yeah. So
right. Yeah. That's so, that's what, when I'm responding to Dylan and other people on Twitter and critical thinking veterans saying, well, I thought you were being antagonistic. Yeah, I was, because I was pissed off. So does Dylan deserve that himself? Maybe not, but I still think he's being hypocritical. That was my take on it. That doesn't mean I wish Dylan ill. I don't want him to lose money or to get an illness. But I still think it's hypocritical, and it's a huge problem that I see. But I'm not going to do a show anymore as long as Mr. Geck's attached to it because I just think I wouldn't expect someone, if my co-host on a show or someone that was part of the production of my show treated someone like that, I wouldn't expect them to want to benefit that person by helping out their show. So. That's my feeling on it, but who knows? Maybe I'll change my mind in the future. But I guess technically I did a show here.
What changed his mind about the conversation today? We reviewed the conversation today. Maybe he's changed his mind, so maybe not. We'll see.
Okay, yeah, that's why I didn't know that Dylan was talking about it until you. I was busy in the evening, but I saw that you messaged me on Discord, so I was like, oh. And then I checked my Twitter and I saw Dylan responded to Aftershock and I was like, I'm up late doing nothing. So if you want to talk about it now, we can. And, it is what it is. I still think it's hypocritical. And I'll be honest, it kind of pisses me off because I see how many people are being negatively affected by these lockdowns. And so when I see people say, well, it's okay for me to violate orders, but it's not okay for other people to do it, it kind of infuriates me.
Do you think both of them shouldn't have been open, right? They shouldn't have been protesting and the gym should have been shut as much as possible or followed guidelines.
Well, see, I feel the opposite. That's my feeling on it is I think that Dylan should, if he wants to protest. And if the gym wants to be open, they should be open. And if I'm worried about COVID,
I the same guidelines, right?
Right. I just think that it's this is my biggest pet peeve when talking politics with people. I actually respect people that completely disagree with me more than people that half agree with me but are hypocritical. So for me, it's like, if you're saying, I disagree that these orders, that we should take away people's freedom and destroy the economy with these lockdown orders and things like that. So I say it should be up to each individual. Now, you might disagree with me, but if your disagreement is, no, I think everyone should have to follow the same orders, then I respect you. I disagree, but I respect that, like, hey, at least that's a fair-minded opinion. Once you start to say, well, wait a minute, it's okay for this group of people to violate orders, but not okay for this, that's when I just lose respect for people because I don't see the moral justification for that. And to apply it to a more obvious political situation, it's like if you thought that it was criminal to try to get dirt from foreign sources on your opponent, I disagree with you. I think fine. If you want to get dirt and foreign sources from your opponent, go at it. But if you say, no, Rob, I disagree with you, it should be illegal, then it should be illegal no matter what party does it. So if Trump did it, he should be arrested. If Hillary did it, she should be arrested. But what pisses me off is so many people are like, well, what Trump did was illegal, but what Hillary did was fine. It was okay for her to get dirt on Trump from Russians. That's what aggravates me. And I see that constantly in our political system, especially with COVID. And I will say this, I didn't say this to Dylan, just out of being polite. I do not believe that he was 6 feet apart from everyone that entire protest.
In the same breath, I don't believe that you've always worn your mask. I believe you must have forgot it once or twice. It just happens. It's happened to me. And I don't go outside.
But the difference is this. Like, I understand you could believe that, but and it could have happened. It could have happened.
Is 6 feet apart from someone. It's impossible to be.
Wear your mask. That's not an impossible burden. I mean, I would say
you can forget as you walk out of the car and then go, oh shit, and then go back to the car.
Yes. Oh, and if that's the criteria, like that literally could have happened. In fact, there have been times I'm walking through the parking lot putting the mask on. That's certainly true. And I can't think of an instance, but it certainly could have been that I got halfway to the store and turned around. But I can tell you this, in good faith, I can't think of an instance where I set feet through a door of a business and didn't have a mask on. That's just the God's honest truth. It could have happened, though. I mean, if it happened, I probably wouldn't even remember. So it could have happened. But I'm not suggesting that people should be punished that did that. Dylan is suggesting that if people violate mask orders, that they should be punished. So
well, if the gym owners should have been punished, then the protesters should
right,
have been punished.
And that's exactly
the same standard. Yeah.
Yep. So, all right, man. Well, hey, yeah, thanks for chiming in, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Good talking to you, Rob.
All right, have a good one, man.
You too.
But yeah, I just what I was saying there is I just don't believe the idea that Dylan was always 6 feet, and maybe he did so without realizing. I believe that he probably consciously thought, I don't want to be shoulder to shoulder with people. But certainly in the heat of the moment. And I just want to show you something. The mere implication, that's the one part that I think was probably most frustrating, because I do think that Dylan came off sounding far more reasonable than I expected. And I do have at least one thing to apologize, which I did apologize to him, that I want to repeat this apology was, if it's true, and I have no reason to disbelieve, that Dylan was against the pulling down of statues and was against property destruction, yes, he could have been more vocal, but that's hardly a huge complaint. Then I could see him saying, oh, and I'm upset when the Proud Boys destroyed property that I respected. I think that's fair. If you're against property destruction in all instances, so be it. I feel the same way. I don't like Black Lives Matter, but I do not think the Proud Boys have the right to go to a church and destroy a sign that they set up that says Black Lives Matter. I just don't. And I know people are going to disagree with me. If you're against property destruction, you're against property destruction, period. That's how I feel. But the idea that he maintained 6 feet distance the entire time, I just don't believe it. And the one thing so I do apologize to Dylan, because I did heavily imply that he didn't say anything and he didn't have a problem when people were tearing down statues. And if I misjudged him on that, I apologize. I sincerely do on that specific thing. But the implication that one of the things that I like, this sort of implication that, the Black Lives Matter rallies are okay because they're important and they're taking the necessary precautions. They're standing 6 feet apart. It's just not true. For example, let's take this picture. How many times do you see these signs? Almost every rally I see has a sign like that, right? The very nature of that sign is people are standing shoulder to shoulder. I mean, it's every single one. Look at these pictures. I mean, come on. Not everyone's wearing masks, or the masks are down. I don't have to show you, you know. Let me go grab a drink real quick, and then I got to finish up. But tell you right now, though, I'll say this. If I owned a business, I would stay open and I wouldn't force people to wear masks. And I would wear a mask. But I wouldn't force others. Thanks for the kind words, everyone. I also have another apology. I banned someone earlier today that I probably shouldn't have because I was just pissed off after the discussion with Mr. Geck. So apologize for that, but whatever. And I banned them because he was implying that it wasn't the governor's fault for forcing nursing homes to accept COVID patients. It was the COVID patients' fault for not leaving the nursing home, which is incredibly dumb, but probably not reason to ban someone, so I apologize. I hear you, Neil. I don't know that I'll be doing a debate with him anytime soon. But didn't feel like talking about the other subject, which I heavily wanted to talk about as well. And the idea of which is he felt that it was important to go out and challenge the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys feel that it's important to go out and challenge Black Lives Matter. And listen, you didn't go out for a peaceful protest if you were wearing shields and had weapons. And I don't mean a face shield. I mean a literal shield. Yeah, I know, Sarah. My channel gets screwed all the time as far as the amount of people that are watching. But yeah, thanks for being here, Sarah. And this is again, let me be quite clear. And I will say to Dylan's credit, he seemed to be hesitant to want to punish the gym owner. Please understand what I'm saying here to anyone listening. I don't think you're a hypocrite if you just say, look, that person's a dumbass. Thank you so much, Beer Freaking Boy. Yeah, please come back. I'll probably be streaming tomorrow at some point too. Like, so for example, I could say, I think that people that intentionally don't wear a mask and go into a store and then yell at, a 20-year-old that's making $10 an hour, I think that they're a dumbass. I do. And I know that a lot of Trump supporters won't like that. My feeling, if you don't want to wear a mask, I don't think you're a dumbass for not wanting to wear a mask. I don't think that at all. I think there are credible reasons to make the choice to not wear a mask. Maybe you believe different science. You believe that the mask could be dangerous. Maybe you have some sort of illness. Maybe you believe it's just all about control. Whatever. I'm not calling you a dumbass for that. But I do think it's stupid. And I've seen these people that are like, I'm not wearing a mask anywhere. And then they walk into Walmart and there's some girl there making $10 an hour that says, sir, you have to wear a mask or you leave. And they'll sit there and scream at that girl. That's just dumb. That girl didn't do it. She didn't create the order. You just say, fine, you don't want me here without a mask? Then I'll take my business elsewhere. That's the correct response. So I think you're a dumbass if you do that. However, I don't want you punished. So I'm not a hypocrite. I just think you're dumb. I think there are dumb people all the time. Sometimes people that are conservatives, definitely people that are on the left that I call stupid all the time. So I don't think just calling someone stupid makes Dylan a hypocrite, right? I don't think that. And if Dylan would have said, let me be clear, I just think that gym owner's dumb, but he has every right to open his business and not force people to wear a mask. I just think he's a dumbass. That's not being a hypocrite. That's not. The hypocrisy is saying, and I think he should be forced to force people to wear a mask. That's the hypocrisy. And even if Dylan's reticent to say that, he did say that. No, I didn't hear about that, Alpha. I didn't. Here in Hong Kong, mask was mandatory from day one. Yeah, I'm against the mask mandate. I am. I mean, my feeling, that the entire time I feel like I would have been for a short-term mask mandate if there would have been transparent explanation of exactly why it was necessary, and it would have been universally enforced. But I don't see anything close to that. Again, the places, just anecdotally, I'm not saying masks work or don't work. I don't know. But for example, the states we could see that embraced mask mandates more, like New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Pennsylvania, their numbers and per capita deaths are far higher than places that were loose with the masks, such as Florida. They were super loose with the lockdowns and with the masks. Good for them not turning over customer information. What's up, Aftershock? Yeah, man, thank you. Yeah, I thought you made some awesome points. Well, I hear you, Nil, but Nil, he would have said, well, I had my crew to back me up. Aftershock was on there. I'll check it out later, Alpha. But yeah, I just think it's hypocritical. And I will say this, though. I will say this to Dylan's credit. He's certainly not the worst hypocrite, even though I think he's a hypocrite. Let me talk about this idea that I lump everyone in together on the left. That is something that I need to work on when it comes to a specific individuals. Right? That's true. But at the end of the day, the importance isn't people like Dylan and I, which is why I focus most of my energy when I'm talking about the left of people that control the Democratic Party, the mainstream media, the tech industries, the entertainment industries, the corporations, the intel agencies, etc. And people that support them. Now, that's not always fair. Sometimes I'll be ranting about that, and someone like Dylan will say, but that's not what I personally believe. And yeah, sometimes that does result in me screwing up. And again, if I find that I screw up, I will apologize for that. But, and I'm not saying this specifically with the case of Dylan, but oftentimes that's used in bad faith. For example, I've told you, how many people now on the left are like, Russia? I never mentioned Russia. I never mentioned that. And things of that nature. So, yeah, I thought that, the worst things that I thought that came from Dylan there was kind of the implication that Black Lives Matter. I don't know that they, they don't stand 6 feet apart. Of course, they don't. Of course. Or the idea, I don't know, there's some scientists that say, that the large gatherings, that the majority of credible scientists are saying you should social distance from large gatherings. He knows that. So deflecting on that seems a bit tenuous. There's definitely an echo chamber on both sides. But what's important is which side is controlling the narrative. Or like the idea that kind of this argument about Black Lives Matter and we just focus on the negative of it. That's garbage. Yes, if it comes to an individual peaceful Black Lives Matter rally versus an individual one that burnt down a police precinct, the mainstream media is going to talk about the latter more. But overwhelmingly, they talk positive about Black Lives Matter and even criticize people for bringing up the negative instances. And he knows that's true. Absolutely. Herrick says, no, that's not what's important. You could even look to yourself and ask what you are doing beyond nurturing bipartisan echoing. I could, but then I could say the same of you, that I think that some of the most damaging people that causes the authoritarian are people like you. People that try to play this centrist point and say, oh, we need to be beyond. Both sides do it. Both the left and right do it. And I'm above and beyond that. I got above and beyond that. No, you didn't. What you've done is you've deflected by the fact that clearly the majority of the problem is coming from the establishment, which right now is being defended overwhelmingly by people on the left. You don't think my internet connection's perfect yet? It might not be. It says that I haven't dropped any frames here, but thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. Right, but it's not saying... Okay, that's unfair to say that you're saying you're beyond it, but many people do say, like, there I go again, right? But you have to call out when the abuse is coming worse from one part versus another. You have to. And it's not just me saying this. This is people on the left saying it as well. For example, I am against these foreign regime change wars. It is overwhelmingly that the average person that is now most in support for sort of interventionism is left-wingers. It used to be right-wingers. When it was right-wingers, it was worth pointing out where the problem was coming from. Just like it's worth pointing out where the problem's coming from when it's left-wingers. The average person that supports censoring people whose ideas they disagree with are left-wingers now. That's just true. And oftentimes we fall into this trap of saying, yes, but both sides do it. But when we do that, it allows us to make excuses and not call out the problem adequately. Now, I would agree that I think that we probably need more than two parties. And I also agree that at the top levels of the establishment, that the parties are more, or basically one party, and it's establishment versus basically the people. Yeah, I didn't mean it. Yeah, I didn't mean to insult you there either, Herrick. And I don't mind being held to a higher standard. That's fine. So I do need to get better on the specifics. I'll give you that. So when I'm talking about the specifics and I'm talking about people on the left, in regards to kind of the hypocrisy on COVID, I'm talking exactly about what this debate was this evening. The idea that so many of them say it's okay for me to violate what the scientists say, but it's not okay for other people to do it. I don't see that on the right as much. Perhaps someone could show me. In fact, I don't see it on the right at all. I know it would exist to some degree, but I don't see anyone saying, look, I should be allowed to go out to buy protest, but left-wing businesses shouldn't be allowed to open. I don't see anyone saying that. Should we assassinate Erdogan? Probably not, but that's different than what I'm talking about with these regime change wars. Like, for example, I just did a panel where, other than Prime Case, who's a socialist, maybe even a communist, I think he might, I'm not saying that, I despise communism, don't get me wrong, but I'm not saying that to disparaging. I'm saying because I think he's a self-identified communist. He was against kind of this keeping troops overseas forever, but every other leftist on there was like, oh, no, I'm for it. But Erdogan's obviously a bad person. But all right, I should probably be heading to bed. So let me just say this. Thank you, everyone that watched. I really appreciate it. Anyone who donated, thank you so much. I missed some of the donations. Well, Herrick, that's certainly true. There are more people on the right that make it a point of pride to announce that they're not wearing masks. Absolutely. That's somewhere where it is worth pointing out that the right does that more than the left. Absolutely. But I don't see those people. I don't see those people saying, I'm proud not to wear a mask, but I think that the other side should follow the scientific orders. Do you understand the difference? But you're right when we're talking specifically about what Which side announces that they're not going to wear masks more? I would say it's the right. I would say that's absolutely true. And I would say it would be disingenuous to say, well, both sides do it. Yeah, but the right does it more. Now, there certainly were reasons for that. Remember, they told us originally masks didn't work. Makes it more likely in danger. Right, but there becomes the question. So what caused the spread more? Me not wearing a mask when I attend my local restaurant, if that I usually did, or 100,000 of people, some of which were wearing masks, protesting for Black Lives Matter. It's not a form of violence to put other people at risk. Who's at risk? If I attend a Black Lives Matter rally, or if I don't attend a Black Lives Matter rally, I wasn't put at risk by them violating social distance orders to go out there and protest. I'm only at risk if I, too, decide to violate the orders. I don't know if I believe that, Herrick. Herrick says restaurants were linked to the spread of 70% of new cases at one point in California. I would find that shocking because I don't know. I don't know that that's not true, but I'll say this. I have personally read the evidence that New York used that said only 1.4% of COVID cases were linked to restaurants. So I would be shocked if in New York it was 1.4 and in California it was 70. That would be shocking to me. Let me see if I can find it. And how many cases of extreme poverty will be linked to the lockdowns? And which side, if you believe, right, isn't that putting people at risk as well? Causing economic pain to them, which predictably causes health side effects? But that's different, Eric. Right, there's a lot of type of things fudging going on. Yeah, 70 saying that of everyone who got COVID, 70% had been to restaurants doesn't mean 70% of people that got COVID got them at restaurants. Again, the New York City data. Right, and that's the problem. See, the problem is this, Herrick. Like when you look at this, right? Like anytime, this is one thing that Dylan's right about. You're taking a risk of. So your initial claim is you consider a form of violence to put other people at risk. Every time I leave my house, even before COVID, I put myself and other people at risk. Getting behind the wheel of my car puts a small amount of risk on myself and everyone else. So in the time of COVID, every time I leave the house, for example, I will fully admit this. I am guilty, and so are you, Herrick, and so is every single person in this country, of not quarantining as much as humanly possible. For example, even if you try your best, there's probably been at least one point since March where you were like, you know what? I could really use a superfluous grocery order that I don't really need. All of us could have been like, we're only going to order groceries in bulk once a month. So that's as few trips as possible to the grocery store. And that would have been limiting risk as much as possible. But no one did that. No one. Everyone slipped up at some point. So in using your definition, that means that you would consider every single person has used a form of violence. You haven't left your house beyond one time since February. So since February, you left your house one time. That's your claim. You didn't go get groceries. How are you eating? Whatever mechanism, how are you eating? You order and a delivery driver brings food to your home, I guess, then? Instacart, right. Okay. I guarantee that you've ordered food more time than you needed to, which caused a delivery driver to have to make one more trip than he otherwise would have had to, which meant that there was some inherent risk that you added for. You also went to a funeral. You didn't have to go to the funeral. That caused risk. I think you had every right to go. I think that it's understandable. Right, once every 2 weeks. You could have did it once every 4 weeks. There's no one that was perfect. And if you think you were perfect, you're wrong. You weren't. Right. And there were things that you got from Amazon that you didn't necessarily need. It's just the truth. It doesn't make you a bad person. But the point is this. No, you're not perfect. You're not. And if you think you're perfect, you're wrong. But the point is this. It's not just, you're not perfect. You're not. I mean, it's absurd to even suggest it. The point is this. We could weld people in their homes, but that would... No, you're not perfect in that regard. You're not. Did you go to a funeral? Was it a matter of life and death to go to the funeral? Herrick, did you go to a funeral? Was it a matter of life and death to go to the funeral? Right, you disagree, but you're wrong. Did you go to a funeral? Did you leave your house once? I mean, this is stupid. And it makes it not want me to be worthwhile to have a conversation with you if you're being serious. You're not perfect. Pisslant says, or Silent says, kind of a false equivalent going to a funeral once versus going to bars every weekend. Of course it's a false equivalence. The point is, I'm saying no one engaged perfectly. Yes, some people were much worse than others. Right, got that, absolutely. But my point is, no one was perfect. All of us could have done more. Does that mean we shouldn't call out people that we think were worse than others? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, honestly, though, every single one of us could have done more. So to say that any risk, putting anyone at risk is a, quote, act of violence is nonsense, because all of us have put people at risk more than necessary to some degree. So to claim that any time you put someone at risk is an act of violence is nonsense, which was the point. The idea... If you left the house, you didn't have COVID, right? I don't know if you had it or not. If that's your implication, then anyone who didn't have COVID could leave the house anytime. I'm done talking to you. It's clearly nonsense. But in general, the point that I was making is this. It's not just a matter of saying, oh, we have to eliminate any risk against the virus. That's nonsense. You have to take other considerations into factor, such as we could shut everyone in their house, but then we would all starve to death because no one would be growing food. So it's clear that, okay, well, we need people at least to grow food. And it goes further and further than that. Intentionally causing economic collapse and the pain that comes as a result of that is a bigger evil than doing everything we could to fight COVID. So, all right, it's late. I got to get to bed. Thank you so much, everyone who watched. Thank you for any of the donations, like I said. Sorry I got distracted there for 15 minutes in what ended up being sort of a worthless troll. Whatever. I'm perfect. I didn't do anything. Yeah, okay, sure. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. At the end of the day, I still think Dylan is operating hypocritically. That's just my personal opinion. I don't wish ill on him, but I'm not going to do the show anymore. I think that he could have done a better job speaking up against the person who edits for his show, kind of blaming me for getting COVID. That person's a piece of garbage, and I will not be interacting with them anymore. But all right. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you all. I really do. Am I the perfect little snowflake? No, you guys are all great. Even you, Herrick, and everyone else. I don't think you were perfect, but I get what you were trying to say, though. So good night, everyone. I will see you at some point tomorrow. As always, have a good one.